Good evening. This meeting is now called to order. Committee of the Whole meeting of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. Our invocation will be led by School Board Member Mike Goday, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by School Board Member Emily Chatelain. Let us stand.
Please bow your head. Our Heavenly Father, you have graciously given us this wonderful day for us to gather together to do the work of the people. Let us always keep the needs of our students and our families foremost in our mind, and support the teachers and staff that help us help make their future better. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, considering that this meeting has now been called to order, we will entertain a roll call. And please excuse the absence of School Board Member Mark Ballou, who had a family matter to handle today.
District 2, President Lannis.
Present.
District 3, Vice President Powell Lewis.
Present.
District 1, Mr. Blue. District 4, Ms. Stewart.
Present.
District 5, Mr. Lewis.
Present.
District 6, Mr. Russ.
Present.
District 7, Mr. Goday.
Here.
District 8, Ms. Chatelain.
Here.
District 9, Mr. Martin. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Alphabet B, unfinished business. Item 1, policy revision, EBBI, public health emergency. Consideration of a request for the approval of policy revision EBBI, public health emergency, strategic alignment, operational excellence. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Goday. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Lannis. Comments from the board. Mr. Russ.
Yeah, I went over this language a little bit, and I'd like to move to defer this to a later date to be determined, till we have some more time to work on this with council.
Okay. All right. So this is an official substitute motion.
That's correct.
All right. Is there a second? It has been seconded by, it has been moved by Mr. Russ and seconded by Mr. Lewis that we would defer this item for how long?
To be determined.
Okay, to a date to be determined?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Lannis.
I just want to say I support that substitute motion.
Thank you. Further comments from the board? Seeing none, comments from the public? Okay, we will return to comments from the board. Okay, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 2, professional services contract. Consideration of a request to authorize the superintendent to enter into a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and an appropriate and qualified firm in an amount not to exceed $95,000 to provide a review of the board's fiscal policies and practices for both the general fund and the special funds, to include interviews with board members and key stakeholders, a board workshop focused on the fiscal year 2023 budget and collection of public input, and make recommendations to streamline the board's operating procedures in such a way as to increase financial transparency, accountability, meaningful public engagement, and long-range budget planning, as well as to the extent possible, assist with the initial implementation of those policies and procedures such that may be approved and adopted by the board. Funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? Okay,
I'd like
Mr.
to move
Martin.
that. I believe I had some specialized language that I wanted to use. Is that correct, General Counsel Shamlin?
Yes, Mr. Martin would like to make a motion to approve the release of an RFQ for a budget consultant, and that RFQ's been uploaded as a backup for the board to review online.
Is there a second to Mr. Martin's motion? And there is. It has been moved by Mr. Martin and seconded by Mr. Russ that an RFQ be included in this process. Am I correct, Mr. Shamlin? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
All right. Okay. Seeing comments, any comments from the board? Mr. Martin?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, and I apologize for my tardiness at the meeting today. We've been discussing this item a couple of times at a couple of meetings now. I think everybody has generally expressed an agreement that we would benefit from some assistance in revising our budget process, which we all agreed in the last budget round was not ideal. The budget process has been followed historically for many, many years by the board. And so given the concerns expressed by some of my colleagues and some members of the public, what I'd suggest that we do is issue an RFP and see who can provide these services the most cost effectively and get us the best result. And that's what I propose to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stewart?
I wanted to question in regards to our meeting that we had with the Council Greater City Schools. So I'm assuming that the consensus is that we weren't satisfied with the presentation or the offering resources that they had?
I don't think that we were dissatisfied with it, Ms. Stewart. I think that that they were one source that
Right.
could very well be appropriate, and I would hope that they would respond to the RFP along with, I would expect that the person I had initially thought would provide the services will respond. I think that there are other services out there that other individual firms as well as groups that support school boards generally that might be interested in providing the services. And so my hope is that we get presentations from all of them and decide which one we thought would do the best job for us.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to know, were there any other ones other than the two that we're referencing now that has been spoken to or talked about? And I'm asking that because, of course.
No, I've heard generally that there are other groups that do this. I know some of my colleagues were going to be reaching out to some other groups. I don't know if they have had any results with that or not. But I'm quite certain that there are other individual firms, not just.
Okay, I just didn't know if we had already spoken with some other ones.
I hadn't spoken
Okay.
any particular ones, but I anticipate as I work with staff to finalize the issuance of the RFP, that my general practice when I deal with RFPs is to do everything I can to make sure everybody who might be interested is aware of it and encouraged to bid.
No, that makes sense. I agree. I just wanted to know, were there any other ones that I wasn't aware of?
No, ma'am, not in particular that I'm aware of at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gode?
Yes, thank you. I have a similar question and concern. My concern is that the Council of the Great City Schools, because of their very nature, may or may not fit into the confines of an RFQ, because they would be using people who are employees of other districts and things like that to come in. So my concern is by going this route, are we foregoing the ability to be able to use the Council of Great City Schools? Or do we just express our thing right now is that we want the Council of Great City Schools included in this, however they need to modify or adjust the RFP, or the RFQ, I'm sorry, to fit this? Because in thinking through all of this, I don't think the Council of Great City Schools fits the RFQ because of their makeup and how they're put together. But I don't want to lose the opportunity
Option.
to have the Council of Great City Schools considered, because their cost was significantly less than the 95,000. And I think the 95,000 is way too much money for what we're asking to be done besides that. But I want to make sure and express as clearly as I can that whatever the requirements of the RFQ are, that the Council of Great City Schools have the ability to be part of the process.
I agree.
Thank you.
I didn't think about that aspect of it. I appreciate colleague Gode expressing that, and I don't know if that can be something that in the language, if colleague Martin minds.
If I may, I certainly don't want to preclude,
Right.
participation by them. I think given the nature of the way they do this, it's not like the council itself charges the fee, right? So I would think that the
I
council would
understand,
be
but
able to do that.
there are things in the RFQ talk about the qualifications of the people doing it and all those things, and those aren't employees and
Right.
things like that. So I
That's
don't
fine.
want any technicalities getting in the way of them being able to submit a proposal.
I don't see us, I'll defer to Council Shamlin, I don't see us voting on this and saying it's got to be exactly these words that are in the RFQ. I want the RFQ. I think we're authorizing the issuance of RFQ.
I'm getting into public bid law, though.
No,
so
but
I don't
I'm
wanna do-
certainly happy to make sure, two things, Mr. Gode. One, perfectly happy to ensure that that we address that in the language of the RFQ. Second, I think that if it doesn't have it, it certainly should have language that makes it clear that the system can ultimately accept or reject bids. And if we get to the end and we don't like it and we think the council's proposal is better, we could reject all of them and then hire
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. But I just don't want to get anything confounded with public bid laws and stuff like that on a technicality they can't be considered.
So,
And
Council-
so, it may be at the end of the day, we consider the bids and we consider their proposal and we choose which one is what you were talking about. That's all fine, but I just want to make sure that that's clear. Thank you.
Okay, I'm good. Council Shamlin, do you see anything in what we just said that you need to address?
No, I'll just clarify, the superintendent
Okay.
ultimately makes a recommendation to the board. Once the process is completed, the board can choose to go with that recommendation
Right.
or go with another option. So they're not bound by the recommendation based on what's in the RFQ process. It just provides a guide to the board.
Got
It's
it.
certainly not my intention to preclude Council of Great City Skills from being considered as one of the options that we look at.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
We went through, 7-month budget process in here. And at the end of that process, we talked about being able to get our budget timely, break it down, understand what we were looking at, what we needed. We're paying a fee to Great City Schools already. Why not use them? They specialize in these types of operations. This is what they do. We've talked about getting that budget. When did we talk? We wanted the budget when? January. So now we're talking about an RFQ. We're talking about vetting different people to do it, and then deciding, and then maybe having to go back because of the language in the contract. Let's do what we have to do. Get our budget in front of us so we don't have to go through that ordeal again. One of the reasons we're sitting here today in the shape we're in is because a budget, that looked like the Old Testament, and you couldn't find anything in it. I mean, it was that thick, 300 pages. So let's do what we have to do to take care of our business and get to the business of running the school board without going back and forth. I hope I didn't offend anybody with my reference to the Old Testament, but it's a pretty thick book. And that budget was pretty thick too. So I move that we cut to the chase. 20,000 looks a lot better than 95. I agree with you, Mike. Yeah, it can be a substitute motion.
Right.
Okay, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we forego the RFQ and go with the great city of schools.
Okay, so another motion, a substitute motion has been placed on the floor that we forego some of the details in the item and that we contract or work with the Council of Great City Schools,
Yes.
okay, towards this particular item.
And also, let me, before I forget, also in that Zoom call that we had with Great City Schools, it's really a 2-year process to make sure that you go through it from start to finish. And when we're done, you have an idea of how your budget should be set up and how it should be put together. And it's transparency. One of the things that we talked about up here week in and week out was the lack of transparency in the budget. And their process creates transparency, and it allows us to move forward in a timely fashion. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Lewis. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor for us to continue this process with item 2, but with placing and naming the Council of Great City Schools as the organization that we will use. Is there a second? Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Lewis and seconded by Ms. Stewart. Okay, comments from the board. Mr. Ruth?
Okay, I want to make sure that I have this straight. After my colleague presents this item near on a month ago, the only member of the board that was willing to work in earnest on moving this process forward of how to reconsider our budget process, he was told, slow roll it, hold on. We haven't had time to think about how much money we're spending or who we're going to use. I'd like to talk to XYZ. Weeks go by. Nobody else does work on this. Suddenly, we've seen a presentation, some of the board has seen a presentation from one entity, and we're going to decide to go with them. Are they here today to present to the rest of the board and to the public what exactly services that they would provide? Because I haven't been privy to this information, only secondhand, but that's neither here nor there. You want to slow roll the process, but as soon as you have the entity that you think is best, oh, we got to stop wasting our times and just move forward, guys. Let's cut the doublespeak. We're trying to produce a fair way to go about this process of finding the best entity to help us do this work together. Let's stop the politics, agree that we can do an RFP that's fair to all parties, let them present, interview the school board members, follow the process, and do this properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'll be really quick. So for the general public who may not know, we have used the Council of Great City Schools in the past. I want to say, excuse me if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Shamlin, we first started using Council of Great City Schools.
Sorry, Mr. Landis, I would have to research that. I'm not sure.
I'll just say that it predated me joining the board, and I know that's at least 5 years ago.
I believe
and at some point, we stopped using them, and then we brought them back again. And since we have been brought back, we not only utilize them, but we, as a board, a participating member, we also we are representative of their overall board of directors. Now, I only say that because I hear both sides of the argument. One is the RFP process, which I don't disagree with. But then on the other side of what Coach actually said, which is it's going to slow the process down. Now, we want to hit our mark, being that we want to get in front of the budget in January, understanding that in November, now that we are in November, we're going to lose 2 weeks because of the Thanksgiving break. When we come to Christmas, we're going to lose another 2 weeks. We are actually running behind on time. And I do hear you, School Board Member Russ, that this came up then, and I think that's actually what drew interest was when the comments came up or when the discussion came up, because now everybody has the opportunity to see that we had a need to get a budget process in front of the board. I will say, I will refer the question to the superintendent. How much are we being charged from the Council of Great City Schools for this particular
Yeah, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Board Member Martin, Board Member Lewis, and Board Member Stewart, because they were on the call with me. I believe the council said they were charged $20,000 compared to the $95,000 that was on here. And also, they also had a stipulation in it that said that you must complete the process. If you don't complete the process, then they would charge more. And the reason they said that is because they work with multiple districts across the country. As you know, they're a part of the 78 cities that they've done this before. And so they just want to ensure that the process is completed so there's no interruption.
As a point of order, just to add to that, Superintendent, that's correct. I don't remember it was 20 or 25,000, but it was one of those two numbers. But there was one other.
It was 20,000.
It was 20. Okay, so it was 20. But there was also the caveat that if they were engaged by less than a unanimous vote of the board, it would be an extra $10,000, which would be $30,000. And then they said that if, as the superintendent mentioned, if the board does not actually adopt the recommendations that come from them, then they would bill us for the full cost, which they said on the call would be around $95,000. So the full cost of the services, the estimate of $95,000, is right in that ballpark. That's what Great City Schools acknowledged, and that's what they would charge us if we didn't adopt their recommendations.
I'm sorry, Board Member, I just want to correct one thing. I think the comment wasn't about adopting the recommendations, but ensuring that the board completed the process. The way I believe the executive director shared was, he said that the reason that they charge that much and they offset the cost is because in their experience working with multiple boards, that some boards did not complete the process, and so they wanted to ensure that whatever that the board started, that they finished, and so that's how they came up to that price. But as you three of you indicated, that the goal is that the board would complete the process, so that would not be the issue. But it's not based on the recommendation.
Depends what the process is, which we don't know yet.
A point of order, ma'am. It seems like we're
Yes.
moving to a debate format instead of a comment format.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you so much. So yes, so if we will just make sure that we maintain our normal decorum and protocol and just simply allowing those who have been acknowledged to speak to be able to speak independently and then wait your turn. Okay? All right. So thank you so much.
Yes, no, so actually, I'm still in the queue. My only question is, so they agreed that they could do the work? I mean, ask that question.
Yes, they agreed, and they've done this work for multiple cities. I mean, as you know, part of the council is a member of the 78 cities across the United States.
Okay. So I would say that is the part that gives some relief in this discussion, is knowing that if we do happen to go down this road, the Council of Great City Schools not only works with the largest urban districts around the country, but they are also directly tied to the Department of Education, who a lot of the best practices of what we're talking about and the reason why we need to get a budget process under us, it just would make perfect sense, and it seems as though it would be a good alignment. I'll just stop there, Madam Vice President. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Vice President Powell-Lewis. Look, the points Mr. Russ made are correct. We don't know exactly the details of what they are. I would love nothing better than for somebody besides me, charged with running the school system, to have gone out to their connections at Council of Great City Schools as we were going through the very flawed budget process, as we were having all the angst and concern that we had, as we were taking all the hearing all the legitimate criticism that the public had with our very flawed budget process that put us all in a very difficult situation. I would love nothing better than for somebody to have been working on how can we do this better, reached out to the resources like the Council for Great City Schools. If somebody had come forward in August and said, hey, the Council of Great City Schools can help us do this. Here's this proposal from them. Everybody, the board just expressed repeatedly its desire to never be placed in that situation again. Nobody came forward in August and said, here's something. In September, I said, or October, I forget which, I said, okay, well, nobody else has stepped up. Here's somebody who can help us. I got, no, we that we're all in favor of getting help. Nobody mentioned Council of Great City Schools at then. Nobody picked up the phone and called them and said, hey, in September, and said, hey, can you come down and help us? I put something on the table. There were concerns expressed. I understand the concerns, want to follow appropriate process. So I went back, I worked on this, and I came forward with an appropriate process to say, look, we've heard that the legislative auditor provides these services. We heard from Council of Great City Schools provide these services. We got private sector people who can provide these services. We got nonprofits who would probably pay to have this work done for us entirely, so we don't have to pay anything. And so I wrote this up to say, hey, let's go out and let's get proposals from people. And do it the right way. What multiple people around this table said, let's do this the right way. And now all of a sudden I hear something very different, which is let's just go to Council of Greece. We don't have a proposal in front of us from them. I was in the meeting. I don't exactly know what it means about completing the process. I don't know what they mean by that. I took it to mean that we got to pretty much adopt their recommendation for how we move going forward, but perhaps I'm wrong about that. And so suddenly now we don't want to have a process. We just want to go to one group. I don't agree with that.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart.
My question is for Attorney Shamlin in regards to this process. If choosing the option to do the RFQ and identifying other vendors, which is a part of my question that I asked if we had identified any other vendors other than the two, which was the person that was recommended initially in the Council of Greater City Schools, how long would this process take, or how long of an estimate time frame do you think we would incur going through the RFQ process?
So I'd ask,
I don't disagree with it. I do agree with, going through and vetting, but at the same time, I agree with Coach as well, which is why I seconded about not trying to delay the process. So that's what I want to know. So how much time do you think?
I can give you an estimate, but we have our procurement director here who can probably come up and give you an accurate.
That would be great. Thank you so kindly.
Good evening. Yes, so with the holiday schedule, I forgot who mentioned it earlier. Yes, so that does delay it because we don't want to have, we want to be here if questions come, there are inquiries from potential vendors, and give enough time. So because of the holiday schedule, we would have to call it in, I believe, the middle of January, and then you would need time for your RFQ committee to evaluate. So I always, with my committees, I can, depending on how complex, at least 2 weeks. And if we feel we need shorter, we can get those evaluations done sooner than we can. Then we can come forward. We may also require interviews. That may be a part of it as well. So if after your initial evaluation, you want to have interviews, that takes a little bit more time. You have to give the time for the vendors to come in and prepare for that process.
So are we talking about, 30 days, 60 days?
Yeah, probably middle of February to be safe, that we would have a decision.
Okay, that's what I wanted to kind of
Yes,
get an
ma'am.
idea. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Chatelain.
If you could turn around and walk right back real quick.
Got ahead of myself.
So I'm looking at the RFQ that was posted on the agenda. Is this the sample RFQ that would go out?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just confused why it would take 27 days from today to advertise it and send it out. Why could we not advertise it on Monday?
So this would have to go, and we'd have to wait till it passes the board meeting on the 16th. And from then, let's see, the 17th is a Friday. We are only here Monday and Tuesday the next week. The
Okay.
advocate requires 3 business day lead time before they can publish an advertisement. So we wouldn't be able to list the initial advertisement until we return from Thanksgiving. I can't start it on a holiday or weekend.
And this is the RFQ process, which is a quote, not proposal. That's still a
Correct.
requirement. And the dollar amount, what's the dollar amount to have to go out to RFQ?
So there's not necessarily a requirement. This is a service. So would this be paid for by general fund? Yes. So with state local dollars, we are not required to do an RFQ. This is a best practice. Any of our solicitations, I like to go at least 30 days to give vendors time to prepare an adequate response and things like that. So there's not a time limitation, but the holiday schedule is what's really causing this to take as long as it is.
So there is no legal law, et cetera, saying we have to follow this schedule?
Not on the advertisement, no. But best practice is to give them 30 days. There is a requirement for bids. Bids is 15 days, sealed bids. RFPs and public bid law are not defined, but our practice is 30 days. And we find that if we shorten that, it's difficult for vendors to prepare an adequate response.
Okay.
And they have to give them time for questions with the solicitation as well.
Okay. I would just echo, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have not seen a presentation from anyone on this. I would like to. I'd love to come to those meetings. So I feel a little bit in the woods on this one. So I'm just going to state that for the record.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments from the board at this time, before we go into comments from the public, if you all could state the current motion once again that's on the floor.
This motion is by Mr. Lewis. Substitute motion to forego the RFQ and authorize the superintendent to negotiate and execute a contract with the council for Great City Schools to provide for budget consulting services.
Thank you. Okay, so that is the motion that's on the floor. We will now hear from the public. Pastor Henderson.
Good afternoon. Hey, Board Member Morton. I am kind of confused. You have teachers, support workers, and all these people have been asking for money. They've been asking for raises, and they can't get it. And now here you have another proposal for $95,000 on the table. So you're right. When will the politics stop, and when will we actually get about the business of the children? When will that actually happen? Because I've appealed to 2 board members to actually come out into the North region. 2 of them I ran to Capital City Grill the other day, Nathan Russ and Patrick Martin, along with board member Carla Powell Lewis. So when are we going to actually get down to the business of the children? We say politics, every contract on this agenda is about politics tonight. The teachers are tired, the support workers are tired. And you know what happens? Board Member Martin and many of you, you know what happens? The children in the region that I'm in suffer. You get the flu, we catch pneumonia, we die. That's how these teachers, that's how these people in this district feel. Because of the politics. $95,000, but you could not even agree on a simple solution to compensate these teachers, to compensate the support workers. Some of them are sleeping in their vehicles. But you don't care about that because you care about the politics more. Be careful what blankets that you fuzzy up with, because when they throw sand in your eye, we'll see who's going to suffer. The children in the North region always suffer. Those are the ones that suffer. So be careful when you greenlighting all these contracts tonight. Let's keep these teachers and faculty and these students in mind. They need support, attendance, and everything else we don't have. But you talk about politics. Let's start doing what's best for children. And board member Powell Lewis, you're our board member. And we expect you to represent us when you're sitting down at the table with these individuals who act like they are too afraid to come in the North region. We don't bite. We just want an opportunity. We want you to come see us out and the work that we're doing and the work these faculty members out in the North region are doing. You got $95,000 to spend on foolery.
Thank you. Ms. Matthews.
I wasn't planning on speaking on this. It doesn't matter. If I was planning, all of my stuff is in the car right along with my keys. Anyways, the backup for this item doesn't have any information about the substitute motion. I would ask that you all either go with the original motion or send it on without recommendation to change what needs to be changed before the next board meeting, rather than change it to something that we don't have enough information about, that the public can't see or see what the details are, or apparently that half of the board has not seen the details on. Not that I'm opposed to it. Cliff, no, I love you, Coach. Not that I'm opposed to it, but we'd like to see it. So if it's without recommendation to where we can see it next time, that might be better.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the public, we will now return to comments from the board. Mr. Russ.
Question for council. Can I make a substitute motion?
We already have a sub on the floor, and so you can't make another substitute motion. You can seek a friendly amendment of the current motion.
I'd ask if somebody would be willing to make a substitute or friendly to send this without recommendation to the regular board meeting.
Mr. Lewis is accepting the friendly amendment to send the current motion, substitute motion, to the regular meeting without recommendation. Does the second accept that, Mr. Stewart? Okay.
So it has been accepted.
And I accept it contingent on getting more information, because that's what everybody wants. They want the information, and I agree with that. So I'll make it a point to agree with that. I agree with getting more information.
Thank you. So we have received that motion and second. Okay, Mr. Gode.
Yes, thank you for trying to find a way out of this. I agree that sending it without recommendation is probably the right thing to do. I would ask, though, that when it comes back up, that we have a written proposal from the Council of Great City Schools to do a comparison of this. And I would also like to address another subject, though. This board has not been holding back this process. This process first came up in September, and the board expressed some concrete things that were lacking, and then it came back up and again expressed some concrete things that were lacking. I personally sent emails to the backers of this, offering my help to drive it forward and offering what I can do to help do it, and was told, oh no, we got it. So I don't want anybody in the public going around thinking that this has been held back by the board. It's been held back by the lack of information coming forward to move the process forward. And help was declined when help was offered to have that, to help push that forward. So just to be clear, I support the substitute motion. I think we ought to also have a document from the Council of Great City Schools for comparison so we can make a decision. I too agree that too much time has slipped by in this thing, and we need to get on with it. But I also recognize that the process we're getting into is not going to be something that's going to be completed in 2 weeks. It's not going to be something that's completed in 6 weeks. We have a brand new computer system coming on, a brand new financial system coming on, hopefully April 1st. That's still holding. We have a brand new financial system coming on April 1st with a whole new capabilities that are in that. So, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves and the public. What we're doing, whatever way we go with this, is really going to impact the budget for the following year. It's not going to really impact the budget for this year. There's no time. We don't have the resources to do it, and we're changing the financial system in the middle of it. So I just want to be honest with everybody of what we're getting into. This is not for this upcoming budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. C, items for consideration. Item number 1, Oversight Committee, consideration of a request for approval of the semi-annual financial tax plan update and the 2022-2023 preliminary actual results for propositions 1, 2, and 3, strategic alignment, operational excellence. Is there a motion?
Move.
It has been moved by President Lannis and seconded by Ms. Stewart. Comments from the board. Mr. Martin.
Attorney Shamlin, just following up on the conversation you and I had, could you explain to us what the legal significance of our vote here is? Are we just accepting this report, acknowledging that it is the report of the Oversight Committee, or are we expressing our substantive agreement and approval of items contained therein, or what?
Yes, sir. As a follow-up to our conversation, the board is actually approving accepting the approval of the semi-annual financial tax plan update and the actual results of propositions 1, 2, and 3. These are the updates made to the Oversight Committee about amount of taxes collected, expenditures, status of tax projects, et cetera. This is not an approval of any other aspect of that meeting, including the minutes. So this is just accepting the results of the reports made to the Oversight Committee.
Okay, so there's not, like, buried in this 79-page document, there's not like a proposal to do construction project X, and by voting on this, we are agreeing that construction project X should happen.
That's correct. I actually went through after our discussion, kind of looked through the actual results, and you're correct. This is merely accepting the report made to the committee, to the Oversight Committee.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Ms. Matthews.
Lord, it was all written out. Don't let the stroke strike. Okay. Two major things. I understand that you're just accepting what was said, but some things that are in there that hopefully you all in the Oversight Committee could come together and make some changes. When that tax was passed, there were students at Broadmoor Middle School, which is allocated $15 million. That school needs to be torn down. $15 million ain't gonna fix it. We have all said that when Scotlandville got about $15 million, that was barely anything. It was a drop in the bucket. Okay, so I understand that the conservatory is supposed to be at Broadmoor Middle, but when that idea was hatched, it was a different board, and we also thought we had money. Well, other people thought we had money. I knew we weren't going to have money because Don and I did the numbers. So there is no money to be opening a new school, especially when people are talking about consolidation of schools, because 200 students in a school isn't enough to run a school, but yet we have some schools that only have 66 kids in them with the principal, and yet that's okay, but you want to close down other schools with 200 kids in it because that's not enough for the oversight. All right. Now, 2 doors over from Broadmoor Middle, you have Sherwood Middle Academic Magnet that was built in 1967 and is raggedy. Absolutely raggedy, has never had an upgrade, ever. It is your highest performing middle school. We're only getting $5 million. So 15 million wasn't nothing. How about 5? And we don't get that until 2028. Mr. Morales, I know you can't talk back, but would 5 million even paint the walls? Now, Tara High School only gets $5 million. And I don't know that they've ever had, other than getting the basketball court done, I don't know that they've ever had a rebuild. They get $5 million in 2028. So possibly, since there are no students at Broadmoor Middle, maybe we can look at taking that $15 million and splitting that amongst Tara and Sherwood, who desperately need it and have students. Also, Prop 2 has to deal with alternative schools, and it has to do with the staffing of alternative schools. And the staffing at the alternative schools is completely messed up because HR still has not fixed the staffing from when they decided to move everybody before it was approved by this board, and they're still messed up. And J Campus is a legal document, and they don't have legal access to their students. I think I remembered it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the public, we will now turn to comments from the board. President Lannis.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I want to go on the record on saying I think I've been very critical of the tax plan in the past, and I'm going to be just as critical right now. I think it is a slow process. And by the time you actually get around to getting to schools, what you find is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Morales, is that the cost of materials are going to continue to go up. By the time you actually get to the plan or the project, you're now outside of the scope because you have to pay for higher materials, which is why we went through the CMAR process to begin with, but it's still putting us at a disadvantage. Now, on a similar note, or on a different note rather, I'm going to go a little bit off script. So I'm going to call for a point of personal privilege only because it's not going to be germane. Today we had a school that burnt down, or they had a burning at a school. In the past, in the tax plan in the past, we were supposed to demolish several of those schools. This school has been vacant for years. We thought about reconditioning that school. And because that school did burn down today, it came to me that there's hazardous materials inside of the school that may contain asbestos. So just letting you all know, very soon we're going to have to call, maybe come up with a special meeting or put it on the agenda, but we're going to do an emergency tear down of that building. There is no way that that community can have a school like that and be exposed to that level of chemical or hazardous material. So I just wanted to make sure that I let you all know that nobody was in the building, no one was harmed, but that building has to come down. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further, okay, Mr. Martin.
I want to second what President Lannis said, and I'm quite certain that that particular school that caught fire today is not the only vacant hazardous school building that we have out there. And so I think we need to rapidly explore how we can find a way to, because we're wasting money maintaining buildings that are never going to be used again, just to keep them from further collapsing. They're security hazards. Squatters can take up residence in there to the detriment of the neighborhood. I think the tax plan was passed. I wasn't on the school board when that happened. I certainly, even as a voter, really didn't understand, as few of our voters do, really understand those tax plans when they're out there. I think that it is very important that we focus our resources, our capital resources, one, that we don't waste any money, right? If a building's going to be torn down in 10 years, don't put $10 or $15 million in it. Ms. Matthews is absolutely correct on that point. We also have to make sure as a board today, making decisions, that we are making equitable decisions for the entire community, right? That are driven first by the need of each particular building, right? Don't spend money on buildings that are brand new. Don't spend money on buildings that are going to be torn down, but make sure that within the rest of the schools where we are not giving second shrift, short shrift to historically discriminating against parts of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rust.
A little off this topic, but I was present at this oversight meeting, and I did want to flag for the board that the oversight committee did request a future meeting on November 30th at 5 p.m. and requested that the entire school board attend to discuss a matter that our administration presented to the Oversight Committee. I think it would behoove us all to attend because it does have a very critical financial nature as well as potential for quite a bit of litigation if not handled properly. And so I want to make sure that all stakeholders are present at that meeting. I also want to point out that it is a public meeting open to the public, so we need to make sure that this is announced properly. Thank you.
Mr. Russ, can you announce the date again? I'm sorry.
It's November 30th
Okay.
at 5 p.m.
Thank you.
Do you know the location?
I assume in the oversight, in the
Conference
conference
room.
room. A.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis? All right, thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item C2, test security policy, consideration of a request for the approval of the 2023-2024 East Baton Rouge Parish School Systems Test Security Policy. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Gode and seconded by Mr. Lewis. Comments from the board? Seeing none, we will now turn to comments from the public. Okay. Ms. Matthews.
The issue with this is not local at all. It is on the state level. But Mr. Shamlin, I would like us to protect ourselves from future litigation that may be federal litigation. Last year, IEPs were not covered, and EBR did what they were supposed to do. They did what LDOE told them to do. Cynthia Sampay was amazing. She was great. But several of our children's IEPs were changed on the day of state testing, which is illegal federally. But it was not EBR's fault. So let me be 100% clear on that. So the legal question is LDOE really in violation of using what they're doing when they took out human reader on the test? But because they don't want the teachers, the administrators, to see the test to read it to the kids. But I think we need to put something in our test security, some type of clause, something that will protect us, I don't know the language. You know, I like to come with solutions. I don't have the solution, but I do think we need to do something because I do know that there are some parents that are thinking about litigation, federal litigation. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But like I said, not EBR. So.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the public, we will now return to comments from the board. Mr. Martin.
Ms. Shamlin, I won't put you on the spot to answer anything now, but I would like to ask you to look into the issue that Ms. Matthews raised and consider whether it might be appropriate for staff to recommend some tweak to the policy to if there is anything we can do consistent with state law to ensure that we comply with any IEPs or whatnot for students with special needs.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Just to give you a heads up, actually this issue was brought to me a little earlier today, and I've already put in a call to have it researched. So we're looking into whether this is something we can do at the district level from a policy perspective, and if not, is there some way to work with the state to deal with the issue at a higher level? But I'll provide an update to the board.
Thank you. If we need to, find some resources within the special education program to provide non-teacher test readers or something like that to address security issues, we can certainly explore that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item C3, McKinley High Tax Plan Project. Consideration of a request to authorize the superintendent and staff to A, issue a request for qualifications, RFQ, for both architectural design consulting and construction manager at-risk services for McKinley High School, and B, upon completion of the RFQ process, authorize the superintendent and selection committee to select an architectural design consulting firm, and C, upon completion of the RFQ, process, authorize the superintendent and selection committee to select a construction manager at risk, and D, upon completion of pre-construction services by the selected construction manager at risk to further authorize the program manager to negotiate a final guaranteed maximum price, GMP, with the construction manager at risk within the project's budget, and E, award the contract to the selected CMAR for completion at the negotiated GMP, or should an acceptable GMP not be reached, bid the project in accordance with Louisiana Public Bid Law. Funding source, tax plan. Is there a motion?
Ma'am, I'd
Yes,
like
Mr.
to.
Goday.
I'd like to make the motion, but make a slight amendment to it. I would like to add, after item C, insert an item that says that prior to finalization of the design specifications, that the, what is that, the CMR, or C, what is it? Yes, makes a presentation to the board on the design criteria that will be used, and put it in there for approval by the board. And the reason I'm putting this in is because this sort of starts a snowball rolling downhill, and there's nothing in here where the wants and needs of the community and the wants and desires of this board will be approving this has any input in this before the final design is done, and then it's too late. So I have no problem with the process, but I do want a proposal, a stop in there that says they come back to the board with the final design criteria and things before any design's really done, so that we have a opportunity to weigh in and to make sure the community voice is heard and what that final design is.
Thank you. So I'm hearing that the motion includes the addition of a bulleted item after alphabet C that states that prior to the final approval, that there be a CMAR presentation to the board. Okay. All right. So it has been moved by Mr. Goday and seconded by Mr. Lewis. Okay, and Mr. Lewis, comments from the board.
Thank you, Mike, for making that suggestion, because we've both have had some very candid conversations with the people in South Baton Rouge, namely the McKinley alumni. And, you know, that high school, for what it represents to the people in this state and the people who have gone through that school, they deserve, long before now, they deserve new and shiny. And it needs to be state of the art. It needs to be something that's reflective of what McKinley High School means to this state and to this city. So thank you, Mike. And you were reading my mind, because that was, you know, you just beat me to the punch with the button. And I think we will be well rewarded if we do right by McKinley High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Seeing no comments from the public, we return to comments from the board. Seeing none, please vote.
Please vote.
Guess I said your words, huh?
The motion carries.
Thank you. Item C4, RFP, purchase of printer. Consideration of a request to accept the recommendation from the RFP committee and authorize the superintendent and staff to negotiate and execute a contract with Screen and Related Matters, strategic alignment, operational excellence, student achievement, and exemplary customer service. Funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Lewis and seconded by Ms. Chatelain. Comments from the board. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. First, I'm going to say thank you, Lord. I'm going to say it again, thank you, Lord, because I can't tell you how long I have been saying that we have been wasting money as a district because we have not right-sized in certain areas and using a large amount of paper. We should have went digital a long time ago, and I'm just happy that we're finally getting to that process where we can save money. And I know that this is only the beginning of that process, and we have a long way to go, but I think this puts us in the right place. So I just want to say that. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. From what I've read of this, I think it sounds like it's a good idea, and I'm supportive, but I also believe it seems to be a very significant change from how we've operated in the past, and so I was wondering if the superintendent or staff had a presentation they could provide on it.
We actually do. Board Member Martin, I'll ask the print team to come on up, and then if we could pull up the PowerPoint. Come on up, Chad.
It's an opportunity for us to save millions of dollars. By the way, my name is Chad Simpson, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to talk to you all and present this. The next slide, please. We believe that talking to people in instruction in other districts that printed material will still be around in a hybrid environment for a long time because of needs for annotation of students, to write in the books, times when you have internet outages, power outages, and things like of that nature. And how this all came about was curriculum approached us after COVID. They were having a hard time getting materials due to supply chain issues and things like that. And they approached us to print more of the curriculum. We currently print EL K through 2, and we've been doing that probably for the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm assuming we delivered on time, and everyone was happy about it, and we're having a hard time getting it from suppliers. So during this process, we realized that there was also a significant opportunity for savings because technology has changed. Inkjet came about, then finishing for Inkjet came about, so it all kind of came about at one time. And we talked to other school districts. I'm in a group of other in-plant print shops around the country with Charlotte Mecklenburg, Houston ISD, Jurupa, Omaha, and a bunch of other places. And a lot of them have begun printing their own curriculum. I know there was a lot of questions initially from everyone about if we were capable of it, but we've the next slide, please. So we issued a request for proposal. We had a lot of key members in the system from finance, chief of technology. We even had facilities just to verify if we had any facility needs that we would have to modify and all that. And we got 3 responsive bidders that had a complete proposal from Xerox, Ricoh, and Screen. Next slide. And we decided as a committee that Screen was the best solution. They were the most cost-effective. They were also the one solution that could also accommodate in the future if we wanted up doing landscape binding. So some curriculum like Envision Math is landscape, and we didn't want to buy something that later in the future couldn't do that, and then we'd be forced to purchase the equipment elsewhere.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is there something going on with the system? Because our presentation just stopped on our computers.
And this was worked up by people in the finance and purchasing. This is a breakdown of our current costs, what our expected costs are over the next 15 years. So to show that once the system is in place and we begin printing the curriculum books, we'll save somewhere between $3 to $3.6 million initially. And then due to inflation, we expect that savings to increase year over year. I believe they calculated a 3% inflation rate, which is, I think, pretty conservative. And over the course of 15 years, we're expecting a $55 million savings as compared to purchasing the curriculum from the vendors. Next slide, please. The other advantage of this system is currently some of the stuff we're buying is in black and white. Everything will print. If the electronic copies are in color, we'll be able to produce them in color and still have that same savings. Makes it easier, especially like in math. If you look at the example, it makes it a lot easier for a student to understand what he's looking at, comprehend what's going on. Next slide, please. The proposed timeline on this, if we move forward now, this equipment will be installed in July. We will begin printing textbooks for not that school year, but the following school year. And our savings will be realized in the 25-26 fiscal year, starting at around, like I said, around $3 to $3.6 million per year. And over the course of 15 years, that should save us about $55 million. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Martin?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Thank you very much for that presentation. Could you help me understand what exactly we're printing and how are we printing it before? How are we printing it right now without this?
We're currently purchasing the books already pre-printed and bound. So we're buying
textbooks.
It's not really textbooks. It's more like workbooks.
Workbooks, okay.
So it's the math workbooks, Eureka Math. It's the Amplify investigation notebooks. It's the EL books. It's the some social studies books and things like that.
And so do the savings come because we will physically print it cheaper, or do the savings come because we will now not pay Eureka Math $1 million for workbooks, and we will just get a digital copy of Eureka Math and print that ourselves?
Correct. We're going to have a digital copy. We're going to print it ourselves. So on the student side and the teacher side, everything will be the same except, for example, your Eureka Math books will be in color instead of black and white.
Right. And we're quite confident, and Attorney Shamlin, this may be a question for you, that's fine with the people that published that actually wrote the material that we will be printing.
Yes, yes, I actually raised this question with Mr. Simpson. I'd like to explore to make sure that we have in writing those assurances. He tells me that he does, and he's received that. But we've had that conversation. I raised that question, and he assures me that that's the case.
I would assume that company makes a lot of money selling workbooks to schools.
I think they make the majority of the money off the digital license, and then what they're doing is they're contracting out to national printers such as R.R. Donnelley and stuff. So they probably are making the money to compensate for customer service reps when
we
people
would still
call
be
and order.
paying the company that wrote the Eureka Math workbook. We'd still be paying them.
Correct. You'll be paying them for the
print it.
digital license.
Okay, so we would be paying to them for a license.
Yes.
For it, and they're okay with that because they don't really print them themselves either.
Right.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thank you very much. I would like you to just double check all of that, Attorney Shamlin.
Yes, sir.
That's all the question that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russ.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Simpson, for presenting to us. This is a really interesting and thoughtful proposal that you guys have put together, and I think anything that can save the school system money is a smart move. I have kind of two questions. One is around the service of this very expensive item. I saw that there is a service contract associated. I think it's like between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. Am I
It's
thinking-
about
is that-
it's about 275.
Okay, and who is the local service provider that?
It's so the printer itself is the service is provided by Screen. The finishing equipment that takes the printed material and turns it into a book is Mueller Martini.
Okay, so these are two different, these are the actual manufacturers of this equipment, and they
Correct.
will service it directly, not through a third party?
Correct.
Okay. What kind of relationship and reputation do they have? for
Mueller
their-
Martini would probably be the #1 book finishing line in the world. Screen is one of the #1 inkjet producers in the world. I mean, they're up there with Ricoh, Canon, HP.
So I can tell you from personal experience with very expensive equipment, if you can make the best thing in the world, but if you can't support it, it ain't worth
Right.
squat a year from now if it breaks down on you, right? So what I'm curious about is what is the quality of their support for their equipment? Because they can sell us an awesome printer, but if they're not here the day or the day after it breaks down and we're waiting for 1,000 Eureka math books and we can't order them, that's a big problem, right? So
Correct.
was this considered in the process?
Yes, we called tons of references, consulted lots of people on all of that, yeah.
Would you guys be able to provide maybe a little bit of backup for us, between now and the next meeting on just that, what
Yeah,
that
it's no
looked
problem.
like?
Yeah, no
It'll help
problem.
me sleep better at night if we're gonna spend this much money, right? My second question is just fiscal. I understand the cost and the cost savings associated with this. I'm curious because there was no fiscal note on this item, where in the budget this comes from. Was this a budgeted item? Is this a new item? And perhaps Dr. Narcisse or Ms. Lopez can fill us in on that.
Ms. Lopez is not here. She had a personal item.
Board Member Russ, we can get you that information, but we did have that conversation, but I want to make sure that Ms. Lopez responds.
Was this a planned, is this something that we plan to do
Yeah,
this
this-
year
yes.
that we have budgeted for?
Yeah, we did have the discussion, but I did want to make sure Ms. Lopez gives you the exact items.
Yeah, I would like to know where in the budget this is coming from, that we're not, this isn't just something like, hey, let's spend $5 million and we got to cut it from somewhere else. I think it's a smart move, but we also have to be really fiscally responsible right now. Thank you.
And just so I could identify, the first year is $5 million, then after that, every year after that, you say, was it 3 point?
We're going to save around $3.6 million. Our annual cost will be around $1 million.
And then
Between paper,
and
ink.
based on our projection, I think it'll be cost over, make sure I'm correct, Chad, almost, what was the year spent to the 55 million savings?
I don't know the exact amount of money spent, but we would save around $55 million because you're looking at about $1 million a year for the print, as opposed to $4.1 million to buy it.
But we'll,
That $1 million as printing cost.
Yeah, that's your
Cost to print.
printing cost, your maintenance, because you're paying for the paper, you're paying for the ink, and you're paying for maintenance.
And the maintenance.
Correct.
So a potential savings of around 3 million,
3 to 3.5 million, yes, a year.
spent expenses of about $1 million, so net of about 2.5 million a year.
No, the other way.
Or net of 3 million a year.
A net of 3 to 3.5 million a year. in
This would
savings.
not kick in until fiscal year 25, 26, right?
Correct.
So we've got to lay some big capital out now. You have to take next year to get this thing up and running, and we won't realize those savings for about a year and a half or so, right?
Right, and you're looking at like a 2-year ROI.
Okay. Thank you.
just want to make sure, clarify, I just want to make sure when Ms. Lopez comes, she can kind of talk through that, because Chad and Ms. Lopez and the team talked through about the cost savings over time.
I have entered into the queue as well. My question, thank you so much for providing this presentation.
Happy to.
My questions are in regards to, I know that you've mentioned Eureka Math. I know that we talk about those particular content areas. will this, and maybe this is a question for Dr. Narcisse, I'm not sure, but will these services also be used for other content areas? Because I know like science and social studies are now embarking upon new standards, so there will be new materials that are needed. Or will this particular printing service be able to assist in those manners as well?
The goal is yes, as long as we have the approval to legally be able to make the copies. One of the things that Chad looked at was the which groups said we were okay to make the copies, and we'd have to just look into that for each of the content areas and who's the publisher providing that.
And then also, I just wanted to ask as well, I don't know if this applies to this particular type of item, but were the teachers or possibly curriculum personnel consulted in the process?
Yes. They were we had a person from curriculum on the team.
And so, and they agreed and they're excited, or?
As far as I know.
Yeah, well, this also helps Vice President Powell around, as you can imagine, we've always had challenges on getting, if we made an order, we get a sample, but we would need to order X amount of workbooks or whatever, then we'd have to wait till they come before we can start particular lessons. So by doing this, we can move much, much quicker getting materials into teachers' hands.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to add, we also had a principal on the committee as well. We did have a principal as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Gode.
Yes, thank you. Fortunately, I have a magnifier on my phone, so I can read some of the numbers. But I was just curious, all of this is based upon basically a $4.2 million current spend outside. Could you please provide us with a breakdown of what that spend is?
Yeah, no problem. Kelly's got that.
Because that's the whole thing that all of this hinges upon in doing that. And I guess, look, I applaud the thing, all of this, but I just have a little bit of a hard time understanding how we're paying something $4.3 million, but we can do it in-house for less than $1 million. And so I just need to get a better understanding of that, because I didn't think the profit margin was that big in printing. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to get a little bit of understanding of that. And I know you got some maintenance here. You don't have depreciation in here at all. But that's not going to sway the numbers that much. But I would just like a little better understanding, because I just have a hard time getting like an 80% cost reduction on something that we're buying today. Either we're not doing a very good job of buying it, or somebody's making a heck of a lot of money off of us. And so I want to understand that number before I can approve this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chatelain.
A question I have, is this going to require more staff?
It'll require 2 extra people, which is included in the numbers in the labor section.
Okay, so that is part of the
That is part of
annual
it, yes.
budget?
Well, it's not part of the current budget, but it's part of the proposal.
Right. I have more questions about how this will be funded next year, because it's we don't have a budget for next year, right? So this is planned, the cost we will see in next year's budget, right?
Correct.
I think I'd like more information on what the proposal for where those funds will come. I support it. I think it's smart, to bring it in-house. I see the savings year over year. I agree, why are we even saving that much money, that it costs that much to begin with? But I'd like to recommend to send this on with that recommendation, so that at the next board meeting, we can maybe get a little better understanding of how we'll pay for this.
Okay.
What I need to do
So
to do
that-
that.
Substitute motion.
Okay, so that's a substitute motion to send this item to the full board without recommendation. That has been made by Ms. Chatelain and seconded by Mr. Russ. And comments from the board.
I have to break in here briefly. I think Michelle Ann was the second on the original motion. She was not.
Lewis.
Lewis.
the maker.
He was the maker. Mr. Lewis was the maker.
And Ms.
Ms.
Chatelain
Chatelain was the
was the-
second.
But it's, wait, 'cause she was the maker for the substitute, so I'll make the substitute motion, then we move it with our recommendation to the regular board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so, Mr. Rust. Okay, so it has been moved by President Lannis and seconded by Mr. Rust that item C4 be sent to the full board meeting without recommendation. Okay, all right, comments from the board? Seeing none, comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, comments from the board? We will now entertain a vote.
Please vote.
I got logged out of my page. I'm trying to log back in.
Mr. Linus, what about you?
I got it now.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Item C5, Professional Services Contract, Everyday Labs Incorporated. Consideration of a request to A, accept the LDOE ESSER 3 incentive allocation of $982,804. Alphabet B, approve a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Everyday Labs Incorporated in the amount of $369,000 to support student attendance through its evidence-based approach to absence intervention. And Alphabet C, to authorize the district to serve as the fiscal agent to distribute additional ESSER funds to identified school districts. Strategic alignment, exemplary services, funding source, ESSER 3 incentive. Is there a motion? Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Lewis and seconded by Ms. Stewart. Comments from the board? You have a presentation? Okay, so I believe that there's a presentation. All right, thank you.
To President Lanus, to Vice President Powell Lewis, to Dr. Narcisse, and to the board, good evening. My name is Tirza Smith. I'm the Director of Child Welfare and Attendance, and I would like to introduce to you representatives.
Excuse me for a moment.
Yes.
So Tirza, before we start, is it okay if we do this a little bit differently? I just want to make sure that the questions that the board has is asked, so in the presentation that they can answer it. So if it's okay with the board, Madam Vice President, I see we have Board Member Russ and Coach Lewis, if there are questions.
I'm more than willing to let them do their presentation first.
Okay.
Is that what you're?
Well, I was trying to make sure that, I wanted to make sure there are questions in their presentation they would answer. If there was a question that you had, they could make sure it's included.
They may.
Okay.
I have two easy questions.
Okay.
Might be answered easier up front, and it would probably more for you, Dr.
Okay, well,
Narcisse.
come on, Mr. Russ.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President Powell Lewis. One was that, so I see this is ESSER 3 incentive. If I understand that correct, is this one of those programs where LDOE provides an incentive to, hey, if it's almost like a grant. You can apply and use this money this way. We use a LDOE approved vendor, and this is who we've selected for that. Is that,
So
am I
usually-
understanding that right?
Yes, usually when they do the incentive like that, it's specifically for that particular vendor. So Betsy passed this at their level specifically for the Everyday Labs, and all we are is just a pass-through for the other parishes, and also we have an allocation which they will present to show you the exact amount that we will get and then what the other parishes will get, including some of the charter schools as well.
And so this is just making sure I understand this right. This is a scenario where if we didn't go out and say, hey, we're going to use this vendor for this purpose, we wouldn't have received this money anyways.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Second thing, which I think has already been answered, this is a new to us vendor, right? Not something currently implemented in the system.
That's correct. Everyday Labs actually been piloted, started a little bit with the state in conversations. And so, as you know, we've been having tremendous truancy problems, not just ourselves, but our entire capital region. And so the state chose this provider in helping us to solve that problem.
Great. Thank you very much.
So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Greg Fowler and Mrs. Cindy Welling of Everyday Labs.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Fowler, District Partnership Manager.
If you step towards the mic, you can move it up too. I know you're tall. So.
Sorry, I got my boots on. Good evening. My name is Greg Fowler. I'm a Partnership Manager at Everyday Labs, and really pleased to be welcomed here tonight and share a little bit about our journey to now, from earlier in the spring of this year when we began communications with East Baton Rouge and the different community and city and state stakeholders and parishes around the area that we are discussing this work with. And hopefully the slides work, and if they don't, that's okay too. We can just speak.
There we go.
Cool. Next slide, please. So it's been really amazing since we started working with this community in East Baton Rouge and Baton Rouge Area Chamber of Commerce, and see the Louisiana Department of Education, among others, coming together to collaborate on challenges that the community has and thinking of strategic ways to address them and improve. The problem of student absenteeism is not unique to Baton Rouge, to Louisiana. We work with districts across the country, and if you Google it, it's in the news almost every day now. And the unique thing, I think, of what I've seen here in my experience when I compare it to other districts we work with is the level and the depth of collaboration happening in your community and in your state. Next slide, please. And what that's led to where we are today is, alongside East Baton Rouge, these other parishes, and the Department of Education approving funding to attack this challenge together. And that's where we come in as an organization that has done this for many years, has seen the ways you can engage families proactively around attendance using restorative language and partnership approaches to reduce absenteeism and reclaim as many missed learning days as we can for our partners. And that's what we're really excited to do over the next year. Alongside East Baton Rouge, I've been able to meet in person with every parish and the stakeholders, and it's been a really engaging, positive experience to work with everyone here. Next slide, please. Specifically to East Baton Rouge too, looking at your current strategic plan, I'm excited about the alignment we have to key performance indicators with reducing absenteeism that we can directly impact, adding professional development opportunities for your teachers, specifically around attendance improvements, and the proactive strategic outreach to families that we can make sure is happening district-wide in every school as part of our work. And I want to pass it to my colleague Cindy to just share a little bit more of what this work entails.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. You can go to the next slide. When we work in partnership with districts, these are the outcomes that we're really looking for. We want our work to complement the great work that's already happening, both at the school and district level around attendance. And the way we do that is we regularly communicate with families throughout the year in a very strategic, research-based ways around attendance. I'll talk more about that in a second. These communications that we send are intended to connect families and students to both school level, district level, and community level resources. So that's all embedded in the communications that we send out. We also want to shift some time that your staff is currently spending on administrative tasks, stuffing envelopes, getting things in the mail, so that your school and district staff can actually spend that time engaging with families, phone calls, visits, conferences, to really help those families overcome barriers to attendance they may be experiencing. And we do all of this because we know from the research that's been done that all of this together can help reduce absenteeism across the system. And that's our big goal. So it's what we do every single day. We wake up trying to get more kids in school every single day. You can click And the reason we do this is because we know that improved attendance improves all student outcomes. Students with strong attendance are more likely to read on grade level, more likely to pass their classes in middle school, and more likely to graduate on time than students who don't have that strong attendance. When we talk about attendance, there's two main metrics that we really look at and we really try to monitor and help the system with. The first is truancy, which we talk about a lot. Truancy is focused on those unexcused absences. The other measure that has really come to the forefront in the last 10 to 12 years is this idea of measuring and thinking about chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism focuses on all absences because all absences affect learning. So we're talking about excused, unexcused, and suspensions. You can go to the next slide and click 2 times. Thank you, that's good. And so what we do and what we'll be doing with this partnership with your district as well as the other districts in the collaborative is we will be sending out the truancy notices. So we'll be managing the truancy system across the district and actually printing and mailing all of that out. We will also be sending mailings and communications out to families that just are working to address attendance in general and reduce chronic absenteeism. And so we'll be sending both types of notices, both those focused on truancy as well as those focusing on just improving attendance in general. And both of these are research-based to do the most that we can to support families in this. Thank you. We also want to support staff. And so there's 2 ways in which we'll support staff. You can click one more time. Sorry, I had all these animations thinking I was going to click. So it's hard when someone else is doing it. So we have 2 ways we also support your staff across the district. The one is we will have an attendance data platform that we use to help identify those students and families that need support, and then also to coordinate that support across your school and your district. And so the system is made to be able to create student intervention groups and really think about how can we support these students in this way. Along with that, and along with everything we do, we have a professional learning series, and we're going to offer multiple opportunities that everyone across the district is invited to. We can have as many staff as want to attend these different opportunities for professional learning. So how will we know if it's working, not working? This is an example of real outcomes from last school year for a district that we already work with in Louisiana. And so these are our real outcomes. So when you see this bar graph here that you currently see, these are where the students fell with their absence rate. So we're looking at how many % of absenteeism. So that % is how much absences they had. And this is before we began our intervention. So these are students that we ended up communicating with and working with. And this is before the intervention. And then if you click one time, you'll see the shift there where we saw 65% of the students improved their attendance rate after our intervention. We also saw right around 47% who shifted their attendance tier. At the end of this school year, as far as timelines go, we'll probably, if everything goes well, we'll kick off and start doing this work in second semester as soon as we can, as quickly as possible, begin doing this work. And so by the end of second semester, we will do the same exact analysis for East Baton Rouge students, the timing, the communications, and everything we've done with you here, and we'll bring that to you all and present to you the outcomes we see for the students here on your campus. The next slide, this is just kind of a big overview of who we are, where we came from, and if you click one more time, you can leave it here. These are some of the districts that we work with across the country. So that was just a big overview. Thank you for your time, and we can answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. That was a really good presentation. The question that I have is about in these districts that you all have worked with, in these schools that you've worked with, how was the staffing set up for that? Were there individuals in the school that was their job to monitor this, to make sure that the parents were getting the information, that the text messages were being delivered, that the webinars were being planned, people were in attendance? Because, right now in a lot of our schools, the attendance clerk is doing that stuff.
Yeah.
The TOR monitor is doing that kind of work. So it's great in theory, but but who's going to make sure that the day-to-day work is getting done? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was like, okay. Well, as far as like the communications with families, once we set that up at the district level, we'll determine what the content is, like finalize the content, tailor it to the district specifically, collect all the resources we can provide. The communication part for us, we handle that ourselves. So once it's set up at the district level with
Yes, and child welfare and attendance.
Okay, so y'all are going to call Miss Jones and tell Miss Jones that she needs to come to the school to sit down. Okay, I'm just asking. I don't know.
No, we will be monitoring, and they will provide us with the PD as well, so that we will know what the data yields, but we will be in partnership with Everyday Labs.
Okay.
I'm
still listening.
Like part of what we talk about when we meet with districts is the low lift for school staff. So we're not adding work to their plates, hopefully maybe moving some busy work off their plates and complementing what they're doing otherwise with attendance, engaging families, keeping them engaged for them, helping create conversations between families and schools.
Okay, and you guys have tremendous success according to your numbers. Now, we had a town hall meeting last night at one of our leading high schools, and there were maybe 100 people in the room.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do to make sure that there's 250 people in the room?
Well, a lot of the work we do, we think of our communications we send out as a tier 1 intervention. And so we really are doing the work of reducing the number of students who need that the parent come and meet with us so we can really make a contract on how to get your kid to school. Let's work on this and figure that out. And so we really are that tier 1 level intervention, and we're not necessarily the one pulling the families in. That's what we want to take the administrative burden off your staff so they can spend more time with that individual outreach, phone calls, that sort of thing.
Okay, truancy is a huge problem.
Yeah.
In this district. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge problem. We sat in here a couple weeks ago for a truancy meeting. You know, some schools are having 300 kids miss school. It sounds good, but I'm very skeptical.
Well, we are not a solution for everything. We will do what we can and help complement the work that's already happening, because us communicating with families and reaching out to them isn't going to solve a family who has their cars broken down and maybe they're out of work and they can't get their kids to school. Like, we can't solve that problem, but we want to reduce the burden on school staff so they can work with the family to help solve
So can y'all capture that information so the schools will know?
Yes, we have a chatbot that goes back and forth, as well as we have a family support team that families can call. We put the phone number on every communication we send out, and we often get families calling in. I mean, every day we're responding to family calls across the country, and we capture all of that and we report that back, both at the district level as well as the individual school level, so they know what barriers we're hearing the most about. Anything else?
I'm sure I have some other questions, but Carl is up next. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Coach. I have entered into the queue, and my question is around, so what will be the process, or you can just give us a summation or a snippet of what will be the process that our staff will have to do. My questions are around accountability and implementation. And so what all will our staff be required to do in this process, if you don't mind?
I think I can start. So the most hands-on partnership is with the district leadership that we work most closely with. I think in this case, Ms. Jones, Ms. Brazier, Ms. Smith. And that's involved with the rollout of all of the family-facing communications, making sure it reflects EBR and the parishes we're working with. And then school staff, we do an orientation so they know what's coming, so they aren't surprised. They're not hearing it for the first time when a parent calls and says, what is this letter? And so that's like a orientation via virtual webinar, in-person overview. And then for the more specific attendance improvements facing staff, people who are focused on that as part of their day-to-day routine, that's where the PD comes in, professional learning that will roll out and schedule at the district level and deliver in the way that best aligns with the calendar of in-service days, et cetera.
And I guess the reason why I was asking you all, and I guess this is mainly for my colleagues and Dr. Narcisse, I was asking this question Because a lot of times we have great and grand ideas about things that we want to do, and we pile those things onto our school staffs to do them. And then in some cases, we end up wasting money because they don't get a chance to do these different initiatives or participate in them. So my question was, how much buy-in or how many different tasks would this place on our staff? And then also, what would be the plan of implementation, I guess, and that may not come from you all, that may come from the staff that's standing behind you.
If I may just make a comment about
Sure.
the lift on our staff, this would actually relieve some of that. Our attendance clerks we have specific designated attendance clerks and attendance points of contact who are disseminating out 3 and 5 day threshold letters. This would eliminate that piece from them so that they could focus more specifically on attendance matters.
Would they have to send a list anywhere, or this is all connected through?
It's all connected through the system.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that answers my question.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so now the next question I have, I don't think has anything to do with the product that we're discussing, but, and I don't know if this question is for Mr. Shamlin or for Dr. Bethley or for Dr. Narcisse, but alphabet C says, authorize the district to serve as the fiscal agent to distribute additional ESSER funds to identified school districts. How does that relate to this item?
So a part of the agreement we had with the Louisiana Department of Education through this was that because we are the larger district and the other LEAs are much smaller than us, that they would send us all the dollars and we can help distribute that to them because our pot is the largest.
So are these the other names that we saw in the presentation?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. And so, so those dollars are pre-allocated, determined by LDOE. So it was much easier versus what LDOE would just send everybody something individually, and that would probably also slow down the process a little bit because we wanted to start this immediately.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Vice President Powell-Lewis. I have one request and then a couple of questions, and preface it with I like this, and I think for what it does, it'll be very beneficial to us. The first request is just so that we can monitor the effectiveness of this intervention type. I know, Superintendent, we get in your weekly updates, there's a truancy report in there. What I'd like to request is perhaps in 2 weeks, because this won't be implemented in 2 weeks, right? But in 2 weeks, for the next board meeting, let's just pick a snapshot and separately disseminate what our kind of truancy numbers are right now. And then I'd ask that we come back at the end of May and give us a report specifically on truancy so that we can identify in relatively short order the impacts that this has. And I know the impacts of your software are different for the truly chronically absent as opposed to the moderately absent, right? And it's more effective at the moderately kind of absent. So I want to make sure we categorize it. I'd encourage us to work with them about how we categorize that truancy data.
Yes, we do, Board Member Martin. What we're really excited about with Everyday Labs, as you know, with LDO, they've done their research on them before they have arrived to us because they worked with multiple cities.
Sure.
And so we're using those set of strategies, but that's a part of the reporting process, and so we will definitely
I just want to
that.
make sure that we get something clear because you send us a lot of information every week in your weekly report. We appreciate that. But I'd like to call that out separately because truancy is an incredibly huge issue. It's also one of the few issues we have that is relatively easy to track the scope of the problem, and the interventions can work more quickly than academic interventions that take a year or 2 or 3 to percolate through the results.
And we're going to be monitoring also specifically by school. As you know, we have some schools that are way larger truancies than others, and so yes, we'll have that report.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions. One, I know that right now we already have a system in place that sends out text messages. If my kid doesn't show up at school, I'm getting a text message, your kid wasn't at school. So could you describe what's different about your system than what we're currently doing?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a couple of things, and I think the system that you guys have, like, we work in a few districts where you have that system is in existence, and it really complements the work. Something that we do that's different in our text messages and our letters around to reduce chronic absence, we do cumulative absences, because in the research we found when you want that long-term change of behavior around attendance, cumulative absences have the bigger impact than saying this day. So with the service you have, when it's like, hey, your kid missed today, that's about behavior for tomorrow. That's about behavior for like today and tomorrow. When we send texts and our letters, we know our letters have longer term impact because they live in the home as a social artifact. And in the research, we found that those can have a change in behavior for up to 4 to 6 weeks. So we design them that way. So one thing we do different is sending out paper mailings, you know, old school ways of paper mailings. And then our text messages send a slightly different message with a different purpose in them than the system you currently have.
Thank you. And then a question related to that for our staff, and it may be y'all as well, is do we need to stop using that? I don't know how we do that text message now. Or
Yeah, it's the other text message, which is all here that we use. It helps much more for an overall navigation for parents for the system. So, for example, let's say a parent says, "Hey, I want to know about." How do I get the number for transportation, or how do I figure out what school offers this program, or so it's a little more of a tool that helps to help navigate all of the choice options that we have.
But we're sending. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to really hone in on my question, if you don't mind. When a kid misses school, they get a specific text message that says your kid missed school today, correct? But we're going to continue giving that message, and the parent will also get this other message as well.
Correct, because their strategy will be even more targeted.
Okay.
And that's the difference, as you heard, around how they look at things cumulative. And so the whole purpose for the everyday lab is to be much more targeted and specific around those pieces. The other tool that we're using is much more broader.
Okay. All right.
And we can show you samples of them.
Okay. I mean, broader in that we give notices for more things, or
we give notices. We also give notices for multiple things that happen in multiple other parts of the organization. Okay. So a parent can easily navigate whether they're ELL or any of those things. Okay. That's not a.
So that's to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. That system sends out text messages for absences, but it's the same system sends out text messages for lots of other things as well.
That is correct.
So we wouldn't get rid of that.
That's correct.
That service. Okay, I understand what you're saying. So then my other question is I know we heard a lot.
I apologize, Mr. Martin. Okay, but you are short on time.
All right, and can I ask one. Or perhaps somebody else can ask it for. I'll ask it, and then they can decide whether they want to ask it again. How about that? Okay. I just want to know about data quality issues, because we heard a lot about concerns about the quality of data in JCampus, which I presume is where this is going to draw from. And I want to know if it's possible that we get feedback from them on undelivered text and whether our JCampus is reliable enough for this purpose. Thank you.
Okay, so Dr. Narcisse would really like to answer your question right now.
Just get excited about Board Member Martin's questions. So JCampus, I just want to make sure that we're kind of clear about JCampus, because the issue with JCampus, just like any student information system, is input. And so there's a human component that you have to be accurate. So the more accurate that the school puts the information in, the better the output. And so one of the things we worked on with school leaders, it was talking about how you're actually inputting what you're inputting and making sure that that is actually in the system. We experienced that with transportation, for example, right? So that was really our own learning curve on being much more accurate. And so when people say that the system is not good, is because of that. There are also other components of JCampus that we have to be able to use much better, which we talk a lot about. But I just want to make sure that we always say that, because any student information system we get, there's always that portion where there's an input piece in there. And that is where, from a system standpoint, we had to do better with schools in collaboration.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I've got just a little bit of personal experience doing this kind of stuff, okay? We have a very transit population in East Baton Rouge Parish. The phone number works one week, it doesn't work the next. I lived here for the first 3 months of the school year, now I live there. Okay, as a segue to what Dr. Narcisse was saying, if that information is not changed over in J Campus, nothing's going to happen. And if we've got attendance clerks putting that information in, and there's not a concerted effort on the part of the school, once that letter comes back, or once that phone number bounces back, what are we going to do about that? Because it's up to that child or that parent to make sure that that information is changed. And Mrs., your name is?
Welling.
Ms. Welly, I preached it
Agreed.
for 15 years, and believe me, it rarely happens.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
rarely happens.
Yeah, that's a true challenge, I think, across the country. One thing that we're able to do, and we do it every single time we send out a mailing, is we run all of the addresses through the National Change of Address System, the database, and so we get back a report from them with all these different codes. So some is like somebody put in a change of address, and that code will come up with what the new address is, and our mail would go forward to the new address. But we also get a ton of other codes, like the apartment's wrong or it's written slightly wrong. So we get all those codes back from National Change of Address. We have a reporting system within our database, our attendance platform, that then anyone from the school, site, district site can look at those lists. And we have districts who, they just have somebody who's really digging into that and looking at those every single report we get back from the NCOA database. We also give you guys back information when a phone number is not valid. Now, we may not know if it's a new person, if it's a different person, but we know for sure if it's an invalid phone number, and we get that report back to you as well.
Because the parent will change the address 3500 Jones Drive, but they move to apartment B, and they don't put apartment B on there, then that, believe me, it sounds like that is a huge problem.
Yeah, we have a district that, the postal guy just doesn't want to deliver to different apartments right now, that we're trying to navigate the postal system in that city to help them get it delivered to the right place. So yeah, we dive into that work and help you guys support that.
And if I may say that is a huge problem. Even for home visits that we do, and we go out and we find an empty lot, or we're at an apartment complex and cannot identify which number. So, but I just wanted to say, in the spirit of providing a lift for some of those attendance clerks, when those parents submit this information to get it into the J Campus system, where they're not so overwhelmed with other things regarding attendance and other things that they have to complete.
Thank you. Mr. Lannis.
Yes, I'll be real quick. I just think my sentiments are very similar to Coach Lewis. It is extremely hard to track a transient student. You can have the best system in the world. How can you find a kid who does not have a permanent address? That's just hard to do. And I am, however, curious about the home visits. How many people do we have doing that? Are they trained to do home visits? And what do you do in the case that a kid is not actually at the home that you're trying to track them at?
Yes, we are trained to do home visits. The persons who conduct the home visits for the Child Welfare and Attendance Department are our supervisors of Child Welfare and Attendance. Home visits are triggered by a home visit request form from the school. 3 attempts have to be made at the school level, 3 separate attempts. So different attempts have to be made before it routes to Child Welfare and Attendance. And once we receive it, we go out and conduct a home visit. If we cannot find them, we do have another way that we can try to track down where that family may have moved. But in some cases, we cannot find them until they show up at another school, or some information comes to us. So transient populations are very difficult to navigate and to find. We do find some with, we're talking to everyone, we're talking to neighbors, we're talking to emergency card, just going straight down, and we're talking to any and everyone who may have touched a child. But if we cannot find them, we cannot find them.
Right, and I understand it. And by the way, I'm not trying to knock the work. I just understand how difficult, increasingly difficult that part is.
It is.
But no, I understand it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Chatelain.
I'm just curious, so it says that this contract would begin November 17th and end September 30th, 2024. So how quickly does your program take to like train, implement, and start?
Approximately when we begin the work with data acquisition, that's the biggest initial step, is taking data from the SAS and making sure it's as valid as it can be and accurate so that we can begin delivering communications confidently. We would anticipate, based on where we are today, of being able to send, for example, our first mailing communication shortly after the return from Christmas, New Year's time. And between now and then, we're doing all the data validation on our side and with the district team, and then we're doing all the stage prepping of content that families will see and starting to plan sessions to orient staff in a basic way of what we're doing, and then more specifically with attendance team style staff, PL, and working with the district leadership to coordinate all that between now and I'd say the mid-year or holiday break.
Okay, so January. And so the contract goes till September 30th. So will we start the next school year with the service and then it'll stop?
Yeah, as of right now, based on this initial pilot approach, all of the parishes are on that same calendar where we would go into next school year with contracts still in place, and so the data dashboard's still available to everyone who has it. The text messages happening and like doing a welcome back text and mail nudges going out. And so, yeah, and we hope to continue in some form from that point forward, but we'll be working on that between now and then.
Okay, just curious.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Ms. Matthews. Okay, all right. Well, let us keep moving. All right, seeing no further public comments, we will now turn back to comments from the board. Seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item C6, Contract Center for High School Excellence. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Center for High School Success, SCLC, in the amount of $242,000 and $242,309 to provide training, support, and resources. Strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Gode and seconded by Ms. Stewart. Comments from the board. Mr. Rust.
Do we have a presentation for this or no?
No, we don't have a presentation for that. But the Center for High School Success did present to us
Month or two ago.
about a month or two ago when we were doing the ninth grade, monitoring all the ninth grade academy work across the city.
Okay. So this contract that we have with them, this has been in place previously. Okay. Question I have about this, this is framed as the vendor of Center for High School Success. The actual vendor and provider is Stanford Children. And I have some ethical questions about this because the last time I saw, I think this was last August when I was not on the board, it might have been this same contractor, a different item, funding that organization. I have some real ethical question around funding an organization that takes direct political action in our community, in fact, in our school board, and chose to endorse or not endorse candidates for the board that are sitting or not sitting right in this dais. And I don't find it very appropriate to be funding organizations that take that kind of political advocacy in this community. While I do understand there's a difference between the 501c3 and the 501c4, I don't think there's any practical difference in who's running or administering both of those organizations. So I don't agree with continuing to fund this with that kind of political advocacy that's going on with that organization. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I share many of my colleague Mr. Russ' concerns. I think the other thing that I would like to see before making up my mind on this is a more comprehensive list of metrics of the exact accomplishments. I know that I've seen anecdotal reports, certainly at Terra High and elsewhere, of this 9th grade success program being very, very beneficial to the students, and I want to continue that kind of success for the kids, regardless of whatever ethical concerns I may have. I also want to make sure that the data supports that this is making a meaningful difference in a meaningful number of kids. So since we've done this, I would really like to have more information on this, particularly in terms of the metrics.
We actually have board member. We actually have Stacy Bradford from the Center for High School Success here, and also the 2 of our principals that participated. That they can answer some of those questions.
Good evening, board. Dr. Narcisse and respected board members. Mr. Russ, you are correct. CHSS does fall up under STAN, along with 6 other organizations that deal with education. All I can say is we're in the schools in the trenches doing the work when it comes to moving 9th grade success. The political realm does not fall within the coaches that work with Center for High School Success. They do have some political backing when it comes to STAN. That is, you can Google it and find out what that is as well. But when it's time to come to the high schools, we are in there in the trenches doing the work. As a former executive director last year at East Baton Rouge Parish, I saw firsthand how STAN changed the culture of schools. We looked at WAFB, Terra High School was always on there fighting, doing things inappropriately. Now it has changed since CHSS has been involved. There is some detailed data showing you all the schools at EBR. That presentation was sent to Chief Smith last night when she requested it. I'm not sure if anybody had an update or got that presentation PowerPoint from Chief Smith.
Yes, they've seen it. It's the same presentation that
Okay.
the board presented when we did 9th grade.
So,
we can resend that.
Perfect. Center for High School Success serves 164 schools across the nation, and EBR just happens to have the top 2 schools that we serve when it comes to pushing those 9th graders for success. We focus on 3 main points. That's attendance, discipline, and grades. Okay? So it's, pretty much proven that students who have more than 1 F in 9th grade are 3 times more likely to fail and not graduate. That's, proven. Google it, AI it, it is proven. So we're in here to make sure that, principals receive the, accommodations they need, that their attitude and mindset changes, that when kids get off that bus, it's not that I hope they can learn during the school day, but I know they will learn when they enter my school. Those presentations have been set up. We've been doing the work since this summer. So I just want to, stand and let you know that that's what we stand on. Very vested in the EBR, in the trenches, in those high schools, supporting those principals every day. Okay.
Thank you. So, Mr. Martin?
Thank you. Yeah, and I've expressed this before. When we have something coming to us that is a renewal of a contract or extending services that we're already providing, I would very much like for the supporting materials every single time to have whatever the metrics we've said, whether it's the 3 to 5% improvement that Coach Lewis has noted several times, or whatever it is, I would like that there in the supporting material so that we can evaluate the success of the program. At the end of the day, I expect I will support this because I've seen at Terra the work that they've done and that it seems to be achieving results. But as my colleague Mr. Goday has mentioned several times, anecdotes are not data, and we need and deserve actual data on the success of these programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart.
I don't mean to put my principal on blast, but if Ms. Verdi would like to come up, Bel Air is my only high school, and so if she can attest to some of the good that has come about and the benefit that the students at Bel Air High has benefited from, I would gladly give her the floor in the remaining of my time.
Okay, sounds great. Greetings, Dr. Narcisse, President Lannis, and Vice President Powell. So CSS has been at Bel Air High School. We started working with them on last school year. And so basically what happens is it's an extreme focus on the 9th grade academy. So everything from the teachers we select to having data for every single person. So it all works in conjunction. So we also have Pathways to Bright Futures. So that Pathways to Bright Futures coordinator, as long as I have a 9th grade academy coordinator, they come in and we look at student data. So we look at attendance, behavior, and course performance. So we're meeting on a weekly basis. We're tiering students and the support that they need. Mr. Bradford will come in and he will work with my team. For example, this is an example that literally just happened. We were, seeing that I have my ESS population doubled this school year. And so we were trying to figure out how to best support our 9th graders. And we also noticed that, we had some immaturity issues. So what Mr. Bradford came in and said is, let's create mentors for our students. So every 9th grade student has a mentor that works on our instructional leadership team, and we meet with them weekly. So within those weekly meetings, we're talking about grades, their attendance, behavior, whatever it needs to be. And so it's just not a tier 3. We do have a focus on tier 3 students. So what I do recognize, and I think why 9th grade is important, and I think people wonder why it's important, is because if we could get students in 9th grade to pass 9th grade, then they're starting on track to 10th grade, which means that they'll be on track for 11th and 12th grade, so we see less students dropping out of school. And so I think we finished with like an 88% movement rate to the 10th grade. That is huge. And so for me as a principal, that support is needed. It's someone coming in and analyzing that data with us, giving us best practices and things like that. So for Bel Air, I really love the program. And it doesn't take a lot of, they're coming in to support. So I'm not having to do so much work, if that makes sense. It's there for us, and we're able to really work with the program. So that's basically for Bel Air High School. So we really do utilize and we understand the importance of 9th grade academy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to reiterate the success that over a 2-year period for each of the schools. Baton Rouge High had a 4% 2-year growth. Bel Air High School had a 54% 2-year growth. Broadmoor High School had 126% growth. Glen Oaks High School had 90% growth. Astruma High School had 106% growth over 2 years. Liberty High School had a 23% growth. McKinley High School had a 47% growth. Northeast High School had a 35% growth. And Scotlandville High School was the only school that did not see substantial growth. However, Terra High School had 173% growth, and Woodlawn High School had 50% growth over a 2-year period, because all of our schools showed significant increase through this particular initiative, and so therefore we are requesting that it be renewed. Thank you.
Point of information, Mr. Brickhouse. This information was presented at the July meeting, right?
Yes.
All right, I was just making sure.
Yes, nothing different.
Right, because I forgot his name. Yes, he came and he presented the data, right?
Yes.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yes, there's
Okay.
nothing different. I just wanted to reiterate
Right, I understand.
this
I was just- 'cause I-
substantial growth that has taken place.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Ms. Stewart?
I'm done.
All right, I have entered into the queue. First of all, I have to give a shout out to my Bel Air High people out there. And so that is Ms. Baptiste, and then Ms. Sylvie was working at Bel Air when I was there as well. And then also, I do want to say that I understand the need to be able to strengthen our ninth graders. I currently teach ninth grade. Lord help me. But it's such an impressionable time where, we're transitioning students from being little kids into becoming young adults. And, it goes everywhere from teaching them organization to personal hygiene to, knowing how to speak, and then also being a productive citizen in general. So that work is extremely important. I think that part of my question was answered. I was going to ask specifically about the schools in District 3, and I have to say, though, Mr. Brickhouse, although I'm excited about Estruma, all schools are not growing. I mean, you continue to name off that Scotlandville is not growing, and so I hope that some of these funds will be used, if this item is approved tonight, to support one of my home schools.
Yes, Board Member Powell Lewis, we are also talking Principal Jackson for additional support, as you know, even administrators and those pieces. So we're 100% with you, but Scotlandville will grow this year.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lewis.
A couple things were mentioned during the presentation that I want to point out. You talked about mentoring. Carla just alluded to the fact that ninth graders are coming into high school. They're very immature for the most part. A lot of them, my past experience, they're really trying to find out.
I was trying not to say that, Coach.
Pardon me?
I was trying not to call them immature.
That's what they are. Were you immature as a ninth grader? No. Oh, okay.
Now you know she wasn't going to admit to that.
No, but on a serious note, they're really trying to figure out where they fit in the hierarchy of the school. A lot of times the academics kind of fall by the wayside, but with the mentoring piece, maybe we can kind of short circuit some of that activity that I've seen ninth graders go through. On your key performance indicators, 1.5 is the one that's key to me. The average ACT score, maybe Miss Andrea Akoski, maybe she can answer this question. What's the average ACT score in the district for a ninth grader?
Oh, a ninth grader don't all take it. So for our juniors and seniors, our average is under 18.
Okay, so here we're talking about increasing the number of high schools reporting an average ACT score of 17. If we can increase that, if a ninth grader comes in and makes a 17 as a ninth grader, he should be staring down the barrel of a 20 or 21 by the time he's a senior. That's the goal. I don't have any, now 1.9, excuse me, the dual enrollment credit, that's a personal choice. IBCs, that's personal. But that ACT score opens the door to college. It opens the door for TOPS. That's the one thing that I really like about this. And I'm going to support it. I mean, we sit here a couple weeks ago and gave an outside organization $1.5 million. Here we're talking about spending $242,000 for our everyday kids who are in our buildings who don't have access to outside organizations. I'm with you. I'm going to support this, and much success to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further board comment, we will now turn to the public. Seeing no public comment, we will now return to the board. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. As I said, I think that the signs are that this seems to be pretty good. But we've done this program, we've used this program. I think it's appropriate for us to have more data in a written format so that we can understand exactly whether this has been successful or not and to what extent it's been successful. I know that we have in just a couple of weeks, we expect to finally receive the school performance scores from the Louisiana Department of Education. And so I'm going to make a substitute motion to refer this without recommendation so that we can consider it more fully at the next board meeting at a time when hopefully we will have those school performance scores. And I would like, as part of that, to request that we have a specific comparison of the ninth grade LEAP scores from the year before we implemented this program in our high schools and the year after that implementation.
I just want to, this was before me with 2019. I just want to make sure you are aware that the score comparisons are not always orange to apples, because the district only had 59%, at least when I became superintendent, of kids passing the ninth grade. And I believe it was a little bit lower than that, but we can pull you that data. We have way more ninth graders now moving forward than we ever had. So I just want to make sure that when you were looking at the data, we're pretty clear. And I also bring that up because I know we was comparing LEAP before, but we have way more children who are now reading, passing grades, and also attending school, so we can show those metrics. But I just want the public to be aware, because sometimes we talk about the past and how the district was in the past, but we are in a much different place now in terms of performance with children. So.
Sure, well, and the data should reflect that. I certainly am aware that that measuring performance over time in an educational system is very difficult.
And I just want to bring up one more thing. I don't know, please. Board Member Martin. We also didn't have a lot of the mechanisms we have in place in the school system, where we are consistently assessing kids every 9 weeks. We're consistently putting more strategies around reading. Andrew Okoski, who I give credit, who's been in the school system for over 20-something years, can talk about the type of metrics improvements that's been put in place in the district. So the district was, quite frankly, much different in terms of performance before, even when I talked to the state superintendent. So we're in a much different place. But I agree with the comparison. But I would like to tell folks, it can't just be LEAP. It has to be LEAP, benchmark assessments, attendance, all those things. We have to look at the whole entire picture, and also look at by subgroups as well, because it was also very clear about only certain groups were performing and other group of kids were not.
No, absolutely no. And please feel free. I want to see we're getting school performance scores, so I'd like to see that, but absolutely, please provide all the assessment, comparisons the year before we implement this to now, so that we can make that. I certainly would appreciate that. On Mr. Russ' concern about the ethics of this, I went to the big to-do at Tara High School, and I did not know at that time that Center for High School Success was a Stand for Children program. I didn't know that. I don't think that was mentioned at the July presentation in any way, shape, or form in the board materials when this was approved a year ago, or whenever it was that the prior board approved it. It did not use the name Stand for Children. It used some initials. So I didn't know that, and I was honestly a little confused when I was at the Tara High recognition, when I saw it was very cute. It was a very nice celebration. Many of the kids were dressed up as superheroes and stuff like that. Those kids that didn't have a Batman or a Superman or a Spider-Man costume on, that were in costumes, were running around capes, which had the Stand for Children logo on the back of it. And so, the program may be great, and I'll support it if it's great, regardless of whose sponsorship is, but I don't think it's appropriate for an entity which, as Mr. Russ notes, invests heavily and spends a lot of money influencing elections, including the school board election, to be using this program that we pay for to proselytize their own interests by using their logos and things like that in celebrations of that nature. So I would like us to also explore ways that we could prohibit that kind of dual branding associated with this, to make sure that public funds are not being used in support of promoting an organization which aggressively attempts to influence elections, including the elections of all the people sitting around here. So I've made a motion. I don't believe I've had a second yet.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Martin. So it has been moved by Mr. Martin that we send this particular item to the full board with our recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, and it has been seconded by Mr. Russ. Okay, comments from the board. Mr. Gode.
Yes, thank you. You know, we had a full presentation of this entire program at the July 20th meeting. And anyone can go back and look in the agenda. And I would ask maybe our secretary could sit and add that to the backup. But there's a couple of things I'd like to highlight out of here, because we talk a lot about equity, and we talk a lot about bringing up the lower kids who have not achieved excellence yet. I'm trying to say that very nicely. And to me, this program is an epitome of doing that. When you look at the schools with the changes, Bel Air High, because we talked about how much people increase, but let's look at the actual numbers. Estruma from 33% to 68% in 2 years. Glen Oaks from 41% to 78%. Bel Air from 57% to 88%. Tara from 33 to 90. McKinley from 45 to 66. Those are not our easy schools. These numbers are not being done at Baton Rouge High. They're not being done at Liberty. They're being done at the schools where we need it to be done. To me, we have two major programs that's going to change this district. One is the early childhood literacy and the early childhood math. I'm counting early childhood as one program and really driving that. And this is the second program, improving ninth grade. Because if we can get the ninth grade improvement really under our belt, that's going to translate into graduation rate changes. It's going to translate into dual enrollment improvements. It's going to translate to AP test improvements. It's going to translate to all these kinds of things that we're trying to do. And at the end of the day, we'll have kids graduating who might have dropped out. We just had the whole truancy thing put on. And if a kid's having success, it's much more likely that they're going to come to the school than if they were not having success. So, you know, to me, this is something that works. And if you want to work out a few of the details around branding and stuff I got no problem with that. But I'm going to vote against the substitute motion. I think we need to pass this forward. And at the regular meeting, if there are still some issues that people have some questions about, or if they don't like the data that's presented, it is totally within their right to pull it. I got no problem with anybody pulling anything. But this is a program that works. Let's don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. If there are some issues and things we need to talk around the edges of what needs to be done, that's totally fine. But this is something that is working in our toughest schools. In our toughest schools with the kids that need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russ.
Thank you. I want to be clear. You know, I did pay attention to that presentation from the Centers for High School Success. If it was in July, I thought it was, that's flown by. And I was really excited by the results that we've seen through this program, and we have seen data that's shown that it's been successful. And I want to commend, if you're here with Centers for High School Success, thank you for the work that you're doing in our schools. I saw the principal from Tara High was here, who's seen tremendous success in his school. I'm really excited and proud of the work that they're doing there and turning that school around. I think it has an incredible success story and a lot of ground that still can be made up. And so none of my concerns about this contract have anything to do with the Centers for High School Success. This is analogous to many organizations in our community that for many years have decided that they want to play both sides of the fence. They want to do business with public entities, but they also want to play kingmakers in our community. If you look at BRAC, who is one of the one organizations in town that have a super PAC that for years did business with the city of Baton Rouge and recently terminated that contract to eliminate that ethical concern, because they can't both take money from the city of Baton Rouge and then decide who the kingmakers are. It's a real ethical gray area that it impeaches our ability to remain as transparent and independent leaders in our community. when I was running for this position last year, I watched the board meeting as the majority of board members that sat in this dais that had just been endorsed by Stand for Children then approved this program and spent $300,000 of the school system's money to pay their 501c3 to do more work in our community. I have no problem with the work being done. And if the directors and the board of Stand for Children would like to come up here and tell us that they're going to cease their political activity and decide to stop playing kingmakers and decide to spend maybe the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars they spent last year to perhaps fund this program instead of deciding who they want to sit up on this board, I'll be happy to say yes. But I will not stand for this kind of ethical, quandary that we continue to put ourselves in. And I'll ask the board, if you were endorsed by Stand for Children, are you content with deciding, to recuse yourself from this vote, or do you feel comfortable voting to approve a program that benefits an entity that bankrolled your campaign or went out and knocked doors for you and put out mailers for you to make sure that you got in that spot, and then you're going to go give them public money? I find that ethically dubious. So those are my concerns here. I'm really excited if we're getting these kind of results in our community, and I have no problem with Stand for Children and in the work that they are doing in our community. I would just prefer that they, resign to doing that work instead of trying to decide who sits up on this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart.
Okay, so during the presentation, it was said that there are about 6 different vendors or persons that are collaboratively working with this effort with the high school schools of excellence. And so with that being said, so we're emphasizing on one particular vendor, which is Stand for Children. And so with that being said, I'm, I guess, assuming the issue is, well, first of all, there are a lot of, let me just say this, there are a lot of different entities as far as groups and organizations that intertwine with the political realm of the elections and, persons that are running for office. And so with that being said, as it relates to the work that they're doing within the community, I don't have an issue with the good work that any organization is doing within our community, no matter what that organization title or name is. As long as they represent the children and they put the children first, I stand with that organization. And so I want to ask Attorney Shamlin, is there an ethical issue or any of the sort as it relates to this organization being a part of the group and we accepting to move forward with this?
Ms. Stewart, I'd have to look into it more deeply. I'd have to look into the organization of the actual group, the relationship to what is being approved by the board, before I can really answer that question.
But it's nothing illegal or anything, correct?
I would need to look into it further.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just wondering, as it relates to the business, that we're doing in regards to whatever organization that it may be. And quite personally, to get my opinion, I don't think it's unethical. So that's just my stand on it.
So I can provide an opinion to the board, a written opinion to the board before the regular meeting, which will help people to better understand.
That'll be greatly appreciated. Yeah, I would like that. Thank you. But I'm still in support of it.
Thank you. I've entered into the queue and just wanted to respond. Thank you so much, Mr. Shamlin, for sharing that information. We look forward to receiving that information from you. And so with that in mind, I support Mr. Martin's motion so that way we can get the proper backup information. Thank you. All right. Seeing no further comment. Okay, Dr. Narcisse.
Might as well be brief, Vice President Powell. I try to stay out of the whole political thing as much as possible in this job. But I just want to thank the board. I know it's a struggle at times to sit up here, and I would argue as superintendent since I've been here, there are multiple kingmakers that are attempted in this city with all the power brokers. But I'm just glad that we were able to talk about children. regardless of any program supported by anybody in this city, I think the key thing that, from my perspective, since I've been superintendent, that have always been missed is children. And I do appreciate how we are at least teasing out that the program is successful. It's not just helping one of the kids from the toughest schools, but it's helping kids from all schools. And my view of the world as a superintendent, even though sometimes I can be as controversial as possible to all the groups, is that kids in Baton Rouge must be first. And so any program that helps children to be first, I'm all in. I don't care what group does what. And so I just think that I appreciate the board and their courage to get through all the political stuff, but the children of Baton Rouge must be first. And I'm excited that we are moving kids, more children in early childhood we'd ever have, more kids reading, more after-school programs, more partners working together. Again, I always give the numbers. Ninth graders, half of the class was not passing. Right? But they are, regardless of their color, what neighborhood, what community they come from. And I always say, which is always tough for me as a superintendent, is I watch people take the data or any success that we have with children, they flip it in 50 different ways to not prove success for a number of reasons that they don't want to admit that there's different agendas for the school district outside of education. But I just wanted to say I am thankful to this board that at least we are at least beginning to tease out the difference between politics and kids. And so this makes me happy, even though I know it's a tough space to debate, but I'm encouraged that Baton Rouge will continue to do well, and the East Baton Rouge school system is going to get better because of this. Regardless of what it is, we are a city where there are multiple people that have multiple belief system opinions about our school system. But when you look at all 40,000 kids, this is a program that works. Just like we have our early childhood and other programs that are working. And it's important whether you live in Woodlawn, Board Member Russ, or you live in Scotlandville, Vice President Powell, or any part of this city, that we have to continue to push forward as a community for the children of Baton Rouge. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Dr. Narcisse, and I can't wait until you can add Scotlandville to the list. All right,
Absolutely.
Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I won't be long. I just get heartburn whenever I feel like whenever I feel as though any political enthrall is associated to what we do inside of this room. That stuff I prefer to leave outside altogether. What I can say is I have an F school at Glen Oaks. Who's tracking? Who was doing the tracking before we started this? This data, the principal, when I talk to the principal, when I talk to the teachers, that work really is happening there. And I hear all the sentiments. I really do. And I don't disagree with anybody who chooses to vote against. But if it is for the sake of getting information, I have no problem with that. I will support the substitute motion. But I want us to draw the focus back to children. Because my school is not the only one that's failing. We have a lot of other failing schools around our district. And in fact, I don't think we're even doing enough. Starting in 9th grade, we need to start tracking before that, if you ask my opinion on it. But I don't want us to, as a board, to get caught up in the politics of what is happening outside in that world. I want us to keep our minds and keep our agenda set on what is best for our kids, what is best for our school system, and what is best for our teachers. Because I know when we do that, we can do that very well, as long as we work together in tandem to ensure that we're pushing the needle forward for those people. That's all I care about at the end of the day. And I'm sure when you all leave out of here and you walk away from this dais, you feel the same way. You care about the kids, and you care about the community, and you care about the work that we have to do in here. And I just had to say that. Anytime we do that, politics is even mentioned in this room, it just gives me a bad feeling, a bad taste. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
This room is full of politics. The trick to it is rise above it. If you're up here for children, be up here for children. Sometimes you have to take a hard stand. I can show you printed material that I used 4 years ago before I even ran. The only thing different is there's a couple of bullet points missing because I wanted to enlarge the type. This school district has been wallowing in the muck for over 50 years because of politics and people wanting to control the education system. We sit up here a couple of weeks ago and we argued about equitable language. The Supreme Court said in 1954, and then the Voting Rights Act in 1965, and then No Child Left Behind in the 80s, and ESSA in the 2000s. That equitable language is whatever it needs to be to make sure underserved children are getting what they need. If that's the case, everybody disavow yourselves from political entities. Don't take any money from anybody. Walk the street, knock the doors. Win on your own power. Don't fool yourself and think that politics ain't all way in this building. And if you think that is not, wake up. I had a phone call a couple months ago. Somebody told me what a vote was going to be before it was even made. What was that? Politics. I'm going to support this item because if I can sit up here and give Brick $1.5 million to work with 200 kids, I can give these people $243,000 to work with ninth graders across the district. Don't fool yourself and don't think there ain't no politics in this business. It's all about politics, but it's all about can you stand on your own 2 feet and make your own decisions.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comment from the board, we will now entertain a vote. Yes. This is on the substitute motion to send item C6 to the full board without recommendation.
Please vote. The motion fails.
Okay, so then we go back to the original item, correct? Okay, so we're now back to the original item of C6. And I don't remember, were we in the first round of board comment?
We may need to go to the audience on the original motion and back to the board.
Okay, all right, so public comment for item C6.
If I may, point of order, we had public comment, and I made the substitute motion after public comment on the original item.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. So we will now entertain a vote. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item C7, contract addendum. HES or HES Facilities Management, consideration of a request for the approval of the contract amendment between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and HES Facilities Management, strategic alignment, operational excellence, funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Lannis. Is there a second? Okay, all right, seeing none. Okay, seeing none, I guess that item does fail. Okay, all right, moving on to item C8, Cooperative Endeavor Agreement, YWCA. Consideration of a request for the approval of a cooperative endeavor agreement between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and the YWCA of Greater Baton Rouge in the amount of $1,500,000 to provide support services for students, strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Lannis. Is there a second? Okay, it has been seconded by Mr. Gode. Comments from the board?
Actually, yes. I want to make a recommendation that we pull this without I want to make a motion that we move this without recommendation to the regular board meeting. The reason being is because the group was not here tonight, but they wanted to meet with every single board member individually so that you get all the details about the item.
Okay, so Mr. Gode, you agree to that as well? Okay, so then the motion is to send this item C8, to the full board without recommendation. Comments from the board? Okay. Comments from the public? Okay. Okay, Ms. Jackson. You were writing kind of fast.
So, Fairleigh Jackson, District 5. What a night y'all have had. This has been really great conversation. I want to commend all of you for all of the really honest things that you've said and the questions you've asked. And when it comes to this, this is a really tough one. I know this is about deferring, right? So that they can speak with every board member individually. Well, the public should see what the details of this contract is, because right now it says an array of services. So what we're seeing is that a nonprofit can just come to the school district and say, I want $1.5 million for an array of services. And you can shake your head, that's fine. I mean, you can disagree. Yes, I do have the floor. Yeah, so I would appreciate no facial comments or, all of that. This is a tough one. The YWCA is incredible. BRIC is incredible. But where are you gonna draw the line with the 1.5 million? Is that the sweet spot? And, there's been so many conversations about where we're spending money and how we're privatizing. And, there was a gun found on a campus in a middle school today. Nobody's talking about that. What are we doing about that? We talked about a fire in an abandoned building. We haven't talked about a gun. All these dollars that we're giving to these private entities, when are we going to look at schools as the center of their community? When are we going to go back and say, let's invest in our actual schools, not in outside organizations where they can spend the money with no metrics, no measurables, no outcomes? How many times are we going to do this? You all have done so well tonight, and I'm just watching the whole time. I was so grateful. So many of you have been working together, working with us, answering emails, and all of that is shared. We know what you're doing. I want to say that. We know what you're doing. Thank you. But make it about the kids, as we talked about, as Coach said. Let's stop giving money to outside entities. Let's look at our actual schools. Let's invest in the talent there and the staff and the resources and connecting them with their communities. It's not fair to say, let's delay this so that you all get to get all the details. What about the public? When does the public get the details? It shouldn't be a day before a board meeting. It shouldn't be that y'all have to ask for that. It's time to revamp this. And y'all are, as a collective body, you seem to be on a great path. Please keep that going. It's like you're like on the cusp of transparency finally, and it feels really good. Please keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Pastor Henderson.
Good evening again, Vice President Powell. Won't be long. There's an old saying that when you play footsies with one group, you end up having to play footsies with all of them. And I heard a few of y'all say politics, but you know it's the same people. Baton Rouge Alliance for Children, Stand for Children, who's doing phenomenal work, to YWCA, the same people in this community get the same things over and over. And we complain about the haves and the have-nots, okay? But the problem is that some people in this room been playing footsies, and they go as far as trying to dictate who you select as superintendent of the schools, okay? President Lanus, the schools in the North region have been failing for a while, as you know. You don't just represent Glen Oaks. It's Marydale, there's many other schools in the North region that are failing. And here we are with $1.5 million up here. This the same foolery Mr. Drake was doing when he, Adonica, Michelle Clayton, all of them were here. It's the same games, a different day. The North region is struggling. Baton Rouge Alliance for Children, YWCA, and many other groups know it's struggling too. Thank God for Angela Reams that taught me how to read in Donna Collins Lewis.
Pastor Henderson.
But here you are with $1.5 million and we can't get teachers a raise.
Henderson. Pastor Henderson.
Yes, ma'am.
Please remain germane to the topic.
Y'all keep greenlighting this stuff. And Vice President Powell, you represent us, so you know we in failing schools. So how is this $1.5 million contract going to help schools in our community? I'll wait. Since we can't get a response from Board Member Martin and some of the others. We tired of getting scraps. So if you're going to approve this and vote on your conscience, Vice President Powell, make sure that the children in the North region adequately get services for once in a lifetime.
Pastor Henderson, this item is being presented by Mr. Lannis. Thank you. Seeing no further public comment, Mr. Lannis.
Now, you know I was waiting for this. Let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the kids in North Baton Rouge. Half of the schools that are being served under this are serving kids in North Baton Rouge. We're not talking about the kids who are actually attending schools. We're talking about the ones that have been pushed out of schools, the ones that are bringing guns to schools, the ones that have ankle monitors on their ankles. That's what we're talking about. And it doesn't just extend to that school. It goes to every historical black school, a high school rather, in Baton Rouge. More specifically, the reason why they wanted to move it is so they can present a presentation to the community and so everybody has an understanding of who's going to be served. When have you ever heard of somebody that is going inside of our classrooms and trying to break up violence? That should not be the job of a teacher. That should not be the job of a principal. Yesterday at Broadmoor High School, or earlier this week, the principal broke his hand trying to break up a fight. That's what this is supposed to do. Now, what's interesting to me is a lot of people who are commenting clearly have not read the item, which is very important. I mean, when I was in school, that's what they told us, reading is fundamental. Now, you know, normally when I'm inside of this seat, I try not to get emotional. But when you start talking about kids in Baton Rouge, the same ones who we fight for every single day, the same ones who have been thrown away, nobody says nothing. Nobody cares about Johnny and JoJo who are inside the neighborhood, who have to walk from the school throughout these neighborhoods that have gang activity. That's what that's for. But we're not going to talk about that. We're just talking about the regular old stuff, right? And we're going to start calling names, right? Rather than actually going to those organizations. Half the organizations that you just named, they actually give money back to this community and don't ask for a dime. But we're not going to talk about that tonight. We want to make the focus about something that is completely thrown out of the air. What I would say to anybody that has a question about this item, if you care about kids, come to the meetings when they set those meetings up with board members. And you come get your own opinion about who they are trying to serve. Because I am about tired, yes, I said about tired, of those kids losing out. They've been losing out for a long time. Nobody's put any level of focus on them. We always focus on magnet schools. We always focus on the other schools. But what about them? The gang fight that happened in Brookstown Elementary. That's what this is all about. Creating parent resource centers where you can actually get the parents to come there and get a true focus of what's happening inside of schools. Because nobody's addressing that. Somebody that can actually track these kids and track their performance and give them around-the-clock holistic services. Let's talk about that. Now, if you want to have a conversation after this, that's completely fine. But I would ask anybody that comes to that mic, have the facts before you try to kick something down the road and try to make it as though we're just giving money away. Because that money is flowing right back inside of our school system, and it's helping those kids who don't have any help. And it's actually helping the teachers who don't have to break up fights anymore, who literally are liable if they try to break a fight up inside of the schools. I rest my case. I'm so sorry, Madam Vice President. I apologize.
You're fine. I've entered into the queue as well, and that's just kind of to reiterate Mr. Lannis's sentiments, the fact that the motion that is on the floor is to send the item without recommendation for the opportunity for more information to be provided. So why argue something that you don't have all the facts for yet? So with that in mind, I rest my case as well. Mr. Gode.
Yes, I'll be short. I just wanted to address one thing. I think sometimes people think that the school district is here to solve every problem. And we live in a tough district. We have kids through no fault of their own are coming from tough circumstances, and they have lots of issues swirling around them. I cannot respect our faculty and staff more than I do, but they are trained to educate children. They are not trained to be social workers. They're not trained to do all of these sorts of things. And yes, some of them, Coach has had a lot of experience in a lot of these areas, and some of them are great mentors, and they do all of that. But we can't expect the school system to do everything and at the same time educate the children. We are finally getting a laser focus on getting the academics right. And we're starting to see some of those changes come about because we're focusing on academics and trying to get academics right. We also have to address all of these other issues. And we need to address them as well as we can, but when we talk about wraparound services, we don't have the expertise to do all of these things for every kid or to do it efficiently and effectively. And so, as we do some of these outside contracts, yes, we need to be very careful in what we do and how we spend the money and all these sorts of things. But it can't be with a vision of every dollar that I spend on an outside contract is a dollar that hasn't gone to education. That's not the way it works. That's not the way the pie is split up, because we do have to do a lot of these things, and we need to do it efficiently. Yes, we didn't mention the gun that was at Glasgow today. We didn't mention that, no. But that's the kind of kid that would be helped by this. The staff at Glasgow doesn't have the capability of handling all of these things and doing the follow-up work and do things. We have a tremendous amount of resources that we spend today with our we had the truancy group up here and doing all these things. So we're not neglecting all of that, but we need to, I'd like to think of this as a way of us multiplying our resources as opposed to taking away resources to address an issue. The school system can't solve all of society's problems, We need help to do it, and we need to work with our community partners to do it, and we need to use our best ability to multiply our resources to help these kids. So I know it's not necessarily germane, Madam Vice President, and I'm sorry, but I just felt I had to say that. Thank you.
That's okay, because I was going to ask for a point of personal privilege to make my statement, and maybe it's in order or not. But all I kept thinking about throughout just the small discussion of this item that we've had so far is I decided 17 years ago when I was pregnant that I was not going to break up another fight, because I had to be here to raise my child. And I didn't want anybody punching me in my stomach, but I knew that my kids, my students, even needed support. And I depended on school counselors and things like people like that to assist. But of course, in today's time, school counselors have so many other topics that are on their task and their agenda that they don't have the time to do those things. So sometimes we do have to lend over to our community partners for such issues like this. So thank you so much, Mr. Gode. Mr. Lewis.
There is risk in urban education. You have to take risk to change things that have been systematically put in place over decades. There's risk involved in urban education. We've talked about truancy tonight. We've talked about the 9th grade academy tonight. We've talked about this program tonight. We've talked about a lot of things that Mike kind of just tied a bow around it with what he said. And society has turned over, for the most part, to the school system for raising children. And if you go back and you look at your history, that turning over, you go back to the early 70s, when there was a mass exodus of mothers leaving the homes to go work. You have to understand how you got to where you are. We've got to take risk. We cannot maintain the status quo and expect to make changes. East Baton Rouge Parish School District, if we're willing to embrace risk and take chances, has potential that is never had. There's a potential in this district that is never had because people want to maintain the status quo. People want to play on the safe side of the street. They don't want to do things that's going to upset the apple cart. The thing about this item, I want to say, like Mr. President Lannis says, I want to talk to all those people. I want to see what they have to say. Because the prevailing thought is that, oh, these people just come into the First National Bank of EBR schools. We need to be extremely guarded with our resources. And I'll say this for the 100th time. People, we're going to be looking at a huge deficit next year. So we need to be smart in how we spend our money and what we do with it. But in doing that, we've got to be willing to take risk. Because the kids that we're casting off now, you either pay for them now or you're going to pay for them later. I've got a minute and 56 seconds. I visited a school the day before yesterday, 500 kids in a school. 500 kids in North Baton Rouge. They were sitting there doing the Dibbles assessments. And I sat down and I listened. Because I sit up here at this podium and I was dead set against Dibbles. I sit there and with the literacy coach and the teachers, and I walked out of there with a complete different perspective of what they're trying to do. You show me a kid that's coming in there, and I forget the actual numbers, but this child was supposed to be reading this number of words where they were. Second semester, this number, end of the year, this number. No way, because she came in behind. We talked about our early childhood, our pre-K, all these things that we're doing that are somewhat are cutting edge for East Baton Rouge are going to rectify that problem, hopefully. I don't know if any of us will be up here long enough to see it happen. I do know that I've got more Christmases behind me than I do in front of me. But I want to make dang on sure when I leave here, I leave something that you leave it better than you found it. When we all take our last car ride, there's going to be two numbers. The day you got here and the day you left. But it's the day that you find out why you were born that's in between that's going to make all the difference in your life. So let's take care of the children. In 22 seconds, Ms. Powell, I had intended to second the Hess. I know it's got to be 60 days before we bring it back, but we've.
No, we don't want him to say it again.
No, I really intended to second the Hess because that's a conversation we need to have.
Yes, sir. But that meant that you were 22 seconds over.
Oh, that's what the red means?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
I thought the red meant I was out for everybody else, not me. Okay. Anyway.
So, Mr. Lewis, I was about to applaud you on staying within your time tonight, but what you got? One last.
Come on, I got a reputation to maintain. I can't stay within my time. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Mr. Lannis has a point of personal privilege.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for allowing me this opportunity. I want to, first apologize to my board. And, first, let me apologize to Pastor Henderson. I know your heart is in the right place. I know. But I always try to conduct myself with a level of decorum that shows professionalism because there are kids watching. And I'm trying not to get emotional about this. But there's a certain population of students in this community that have long been forgotten about. Nobody checks in with them, and those are the ones that get cycled through our system into the prison system. One of the main things that really caught my attention with this program is that they focus on 2,000 high-risk students that are already in the juvenile justice system. And it not only adds holistic wraparound services for them, it takes them out of that system if they can complete the program. And it cleans their record and expunges their record and giving them a real shot and opportunity to be successful in this system. It's a program we never seen come to this district before. Some of these kids don't deserve to be, Coach, I heard you say this before, some of these kids do not deserve to be filtered through our alternative school system and left there for 2 years, expelled, and now they're severely truant and they're committing or turning to a life of crime. We have for the longest have tried to do this work by ourselves as a district, and it has failed us. And it has hurt not only the students, but it's hurting our employees. Because again, they should not have to break up fights, get guns out of schools. Glasgow Middle is a middle school, but we got middle schoolers bringing guns to school. If that does not trigger a sense of urgency to do something, I don't know what does. But for me, I can't sit behind this podium and just watch it happen without trying to build some level of solution with our board members. I will again just implore anybody that really does care about this work, come be a part of the conversation before we just kick it down the road. Because you have to spend money in order to get the results that you're looking for. There are some amazing organizations here in Baton Rouge. We're not going outside the state to find people. We're working on the ground with people who have the resources, the training to work with us. And that's all I'm asking. But I offer you that apology. And I second of all apologize to this board, because I did not mean to do that. I want to always conduct myself with a level of integrity and professionalism. I just care about what we do for this district and what we do for our kids, that's all. And the same goes to you, Ms. Jackson, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote.
Right.
Send to the full board without recommendation.
Yes, that is correct. So the motion is to send this item C8, to the full board without recommendation. Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. C9, RFP, redistricting. Consideration of a request for the authorization of the superintendent and staff to issue a request for proposals to provide for the development of a board reapportionment and redistricting plan, such authority conditioned upon the dismissal of the lawsuit entitled Singleton, Keys, Nyman, and Finney versus East Baton Rouge Parish School, and caption number C719057, Division 30, 19th Judicial District Court, and to provide for related matters. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Ms. Stewart. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Lannis. Comments from the board? Ms. Stewart.
Yes, I just wanted to comment. Of course, I brought this item to seek some resolution, and of course, my colleagues mentioned that, of course, they would be in support as long as a dismissal for the lawsuit. So, of course, I wanted to keep that going, and of course, not waste any additional fees with attorneys prolonging this matter under the lawsuit, and still move forward with the redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gode.
Yes, thank you, and I'm going to support this, but I also have one question. You know, we've had a lot of talk about politics and things here, and this is inherently a political question. And the last time we went through this, the selection of the demographer to do this was very controversial. I would like to see if we could have a process where the committee would do their due diligence and pull together whatever they thought, but they bring and present their findings to the board without a recommendation. Because I think the board, because this is so integral to the board, I don't think it's appropriate for us to delegate the responsibility of making a recommendation for that person to a group of staff who have zero experience in it and none of that. So I'm going to support the motion, but I would like it that when the process plays out, that the committee can do their due diligence and come up with their information, but they present the information to the board, and the board decides on a recommendation of who they're going to pick.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
So I don't know if we need to change the motion or not. I don't necessarily feel the need to change the motion if we agree that's the way we're going to do it. I don't know what our RFP process calls for and our policies and procedures, but I want to avoid what happened last time.
Okay, thank you. Shall we continue with comments? Okay, Mr. Russ.
Yeah, I had a question, but I think that it has to do with the case and the dismissal of the case, and I don't know if we can discuss that without going into executive session, but I want some clarity around what the language means. So I don't know if it's appropriate if we need to call executive session. As much as I don't want to pull all y'all into a room again, but I'm looking for advice on that.
As your counsel, I hate to advise you, but you would need to go into executive session. I would advise as counsel that discussion should happen in executive session for obvious reasons.
Okay. If everybody's open to it, so that we can address that, I'd like to request that we go into executive session.
So Mr. Russ is making a motion to go into executive session. We'll need a second and a vote of 2/3 of the board to approve.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a second? Okay, Mr. Martin, okay. And then, I guess do we need to do board public comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we will now go to board comment. Ms. Chatelain.
That was kind of my question of, I just like this explained to me and what it means, pulling the new person card. So that was my only comment.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Ms. Jackson, and this is on whether or not we go into executive session.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to keep it for whatever comes out of executive session, so I'll fill out another one for this one, if that's okay. I do support you going into executive session, and Mr. Russ, thank you, and Mr. Gode, thank you. I think it is really important that you all keep this conversation going. Thank you, Ms. Stewart. I do just want to remind everyone that there is another option for the dismissal of the suit and the settlement of the suit, and that is to adopt the Ware-Collins plan, which was legal. You know, the plan that was adopted illegally split precincts, as you all know now. But the Ware-Collins plan is part of the settlement, and that does not split precincts. It is an 11-member plan. And yes, Mr. Gode, it's hard to talk about this without being political, but it is an 11-member plan, which does reduce the kingmaker influence. So I just want to mention that too. You've got a great plan. Instead of starting from the drawing board and getting into all of the messiness of demographers. Obviously, the demographer that was hired before that produced an illegal map that this board before you adopted should not be considered. But there are demographers, and it's kind of a slow season for them right now. But you do have a really good plan that you could actually adopt tonight.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment from the public, we will now turn to comments from the board. Mr. Lane.
Yes, ma'am. Based off of the discussions that were had during our last executive session, I think that's where we could point to and say, that's where we begin this conversation. I think part of that agreement, which I won't go into all of the details or any of those details, but part of that agreement was when we walked out of that room was that we would start the process over. And I think that everybody walked out with that full agreement. And if we go into executive session today, I want that to be where we start and begin and end that conversation. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Mr. Gode.
Yes, I just wanted to address something that Ms. Jackson, who I fully respect, but I disagree with. This has been referred to by many people as the current plan we have that was adopted, the Plan 22, as being a legal plan. That plan has never been found to be illegal. That plan has been found that it split precincts, but there are instances where splitting precincts is allowable, and there are lots of factors that go into that. So I just kind of trying to protect the honor of the past board. That plan has never been found to be illegal. There was never a trial that was held on that. There was a preliminary injunction that was given that was then overturned. But I just hate to see the term illegal throwing around where there is no illegality has ever been found. But I support doing this, don't get me wrong, but I just hate the fact that people are throwing around the word illegal when that has not been a subject that was found in law. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment from the board, we will now entertain a vote on going into executive session to further discuss item C9.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Okay, if I can have your attention, we're returning to item C9. Okay, all right, so, Madam Secretary, remind me of where are we? And I think we were on board comment? Yes. Okay, thank you. So any further board comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will now go to comments from the public. Ms. Jackson. Okay.
It's the same motion. We just went into executive session.
Okay.
Right.
Still commenting on the, okay. I hope that went well and that it was productive. Again, I'm just going to kind of reiterate what I said. You know, thank you, Mr. Gode. I'm sorry you got fixated on the illegal term. The law says if you don't have to split precincts, you should not and cannot split precincts. That is the law. So sorry if me interpreting the law and us splitting precincts did not translate to illegal, but that's kind of what it made sense for me. Okay, I know you can shake your head. But you did have a map that did not split precincts, and that is what the law says. It was also proven, and somebody stood up here and said, there is an ability to create a 9-member map and not split precincts. I would hate to see you all spend that much time and energy and a level of a learning curve for many people to go through the process that everybody went through for many months with 18, 19 maps. When you have an option that is a map that does not split precincts, that is fair, that gives fair representation to the makeup of this school district. And that is what this is about. It's about representation. It's that the people that sit up there represent the population of this district. Most of that population does not look like me. And the map that we adopted does not show a fair representation of this district. It will look majorly like me. So I encourage everyone to really look at this. You do have a really awesome map. Again, you've got the Ware Collins plan. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. I've looked at it more times than I think is probably healthy for a person. I hope you all have looked at it. You don't need to start this process over, but if you do, I really do think that you need to think about fair representation, expanding this board to where it used to be so that districts are smaller. You're not spread so thin. I'm not having any luck getting you all assistance. I'm trying. I've talked with many of you about it, but it's not working. So really think about this. And the Ware Collins 11 really is the easiest, safest, legal way to go. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Matthews.
I got in my car. Yay. Okay. As Ms. Jackson said, state law, a map was created that didn't split the precincts. Therefore, the one that was adopted is in fact illegal. Also, under federal law, what was held in the Supreme Court, where just because I am Puerto Rican, black, and white, you cannot call me white just because I'm Puerto Rican and black, Mr. Gode. It is very, in fact, illegal. I do support the Ware Collins map if you all were to do that, but I think starting completely over is a waste of time considering what you all would have to go into. But I just got up here to reiterate the fact that the one that this case is dealing with breaks state and federal law. So I wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the public, we now return to comments from the board. Mr. Martin. Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Announcements of meetings. Town Hall, there will be a Town Hall meeting, a Listen and Learn, to be held on November 6, 2023, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Glasgow Middle School. There will also be a Town Hall meeting, Listen and Learn, to be held on November 9, 2023, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Capitol Middle School. There will also be a Town Hall meeting, Listen and Learn, to be held on November 14th, 2023, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Jefferson Terrace Academy. Then there will be a Town Hall meeting, Listen and Learn, to be held on November 15th, 2023, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Scotlandville High School. And there will be a regular board meeting to be held on November 16th, 2023, at 5 p.m. here in the Central Office Boardroom.
Vice President,
I was going to say, do you need to add the meeting of the
Oversight Committee?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then the November 30th Oversight Committee meeting in Conference Room A at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Before you turn to Mr. Go to make his usual motion, I just wanted to let my colleagues know that unfortunately 2 weeks from tonight I'll be traveling at a conference, and so I will not be here at the regular November board meeting.
Have fun and be safe.
I will also not be here at the regular board meeting that I scheduled well before getting this job.
I will. No, I'm kidding.
This is my last.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Gode or Coach Lewis. Thank you. Have a great night.